With the same virus. The negative and all the. So, like, we just went to Friday.
We had a substitute program. She's a little thing.
Yeah.
She grabbed lots, no cancer with love.
Yeah, so maybe, yeah.
I can't go up.
It's going through the team, for sure. So I'm figuring the name because I mean, it's really changed the car. I had all the things. Never really like got well, he never really like got over it. Like had back to back violence, you know, something. So anyway, hopefully he'll be back. Yeah. Oh, he stayed all day. Not after. Yeah. 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 Well, hopefully, on Mondays, he's the schedule. All day yesterday, and then put a break on it. So weekend, so we put them all together. We team teach them. So it's 3 on 60. That makes it way easier than one.
They get a game on Friday.
I know. Yeah.
You were like,
all right,
you don't stop. Restroom across the hall is open. In there. Can run attention to the it worked. For 5 minutes, all of them were like, oh, they're serious. Yeah.
Yes, I can. I was.
It's really good.
Nathan will probably go first. Really just-
Yeah, for sure.
No, I don't know why.
So they changed it. They changed our.
I like it. Watch
Okay. Good. That one.
And then when they changed like our intervention. It used to be like, oh, do you know boy or girl? When the interventions would take kids. Yeah. Great timing and trying to get this one.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
I know that's why.
I feel like you have.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Hi. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for braving whatever you had to brave in order to get here this afternoon. My name is Julia Alvarez. Pronouns are she and hers. I am with Point B Strategies. You met my colleagues Laura and Megan for session 1. Laura is with us on the live stream to serve as our note taker today, but due to the storm and childcare needs, she was not able to make it up from Denver today. So you're stuck with me. So I'm really happy to be here. It sounds like you all had a really productive session number 1. And as we were looking at the calendar, we realized our final session is in like 15 minutes from today. So things are going to move really fast from today on. So we're really excited to do a bit of a gut check this afternoon and see how you all are feeling about progress, check in on how your subcommittee work has been going, and then also spend some time this afternoon maybe starting to think through areas where you anticipate that there may be more than less conversation in March. We want to start those conversations today. So our agenda from now to 6 is to do a little bit more community building, kind of settle into the space. I imagine that all of us are in the middle still of a work day, and so doing some kind of grounding community building to bring us here together. And then we're going to have each of your subcommittees share out where you've been and what you've been up to since our last session. And then we'll spend some time kind of digging into what might be some potentially interesting conversations that we want to start today that we'll finish up in March. So that is where we are headed. Were any of you anticipating anything else coming out of our session today? Okay, fantastic. You have in front of you, and if you don't, let me know. I wasn't sure where bodies were going to land. So there should be a 2-page document. These are kind of high-level findings from session 1 that include your community norms, as well as each of the kind of areas that your subcommittees hopefully have been working on since our first session. We just wanted you to have this mostly for reference, and so that as your other colleagues are sharing out their progress, you have something to kind of check back in on. So you have those. Please let me know if you have any questions about what is in there. And otherwise, I would love it if we could start with a round of introductions, since I don't know you all. And if you could share with us your name, your role in the district, your pronouns, if you are comfortable. And hopefully you remember from session 1, we invite people to share pronouns to make sure that we're building a safe and inclusive space where folks can kind of be their whole authentic selves, and we can acknowledge your whole authentic self. So invite you to share those. And then maybe share with us, I know it seems odd today to think that spring is around the corner, but it is. Maybe share something that you're looking forward to as we hurdle towards spring. So I will start while you all think. As I said, my name is Julia, pronouns are she and hers, CEO and founder of Point B Strategies. And for me, I am looking forward to slightly warmer overnight temps for camping season to get started. So that's my spring hope. And why don't we start with Angie and just go around?
Sure. Angie Davlin, Chief of HR, she and her. And this is the point of the winter where I first feel really cooped up in the house with 3 kids. So just expanded space options outside.
Jacob Markham, Chief Financial Officer. Jesus Rodriguez, Superintendent, AE campaign. And I am really looking forward on a personal note to spring break. We are planning the trip to Costa Rica.
Nice.
Hi, everyone. Stacy Park, Chief Academic Officer, and pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm also looking forward to spring break, but unfortunately not because I'm going to Costa Rica, but because we'll go on a camping trip. We haven't gone camping in 2 years. I'm Alicia Grimes. I am a science teacher at Williamsburg High School, and she, her.
You got it.
And in spring, I got a taste of, I ran a race a couple weeks ago in Sedona, and so I got kind of like a mini preview into spring, and I guess I just realized at that moment how much running in the snow and ice takes a lot of attention, and it was really nice not to have to worry about falling on my feet. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Bayardo, she, her. I'm the principal at Roaring Fork High School. So Alicia and I are together. I represent high school leadership, and sure, no problem. So I represent leadership for high schools and seeing teachers' interests. I apologize in advance. I have to step out for just a little while today for an appointment, but then I'll be back. And I can't wait to go camping with my kids and my dogs and my husband. I'm really ready for that. Thanks.
I'm Rob Norville. I teach science at Winwood Springs High School. I am RFCEA president, and I am also the new head baseball coach at Winwood Springs High School. So I'm looking forward to actually being able to play baseball outside. So far, we've been doing some indoor workouts, and there's not a lot of baseball you can play in it.
My name is Nina Asher, she, hers. I'm at Riverview School. I'm a 4th grade teacher there. And I'm looking forward to mountain biking.
Heather Wilson, I'm a special ed teacher at Crystal River Elementary School. She, hers, her. And spring gets me one step closer to summer, which is my favorite time of year here in Colorado.
Sarah Castellano, for her assistant principal at Lemon Creek Middle School, and also back or get back on the bike.
Autumn Rivera, sixth grade science at Glenmore Springs Middle School. She, her, hers. I am excited. In spring, I am going to Atlanta. I'm keynoting the NSCA conference, and I'm super excited to just share the cool stuff we're doing here at this district, and just share that story at that national conference. So we should go on.
Stephanie West, she, her, hers. I teach kinder now at First Elementary. I'm also RFCEA Vice President. And I am looking to spring break because I get to spend the week in Fort Collins with my college kid.
My name is Howie Kuhn, seventh grade social studies at Basalt Middle School. And he, him, his, I'm looking forward to seeing the first green plants in the spring.
Adam Carvalera. I work at Bridges High School. I'm the high school alternative school rep here. He, him, his, and I am looking forward to. There's kind of this glacier that forms around my house in the winter because of poor drainage. And so I'm looking forward to like being able to walk on my driveway without treachery. Yeah.
I'm Jen Hamilton. I teach first grade Spanish literacy at Glenwood Springs Elementary School. She, her, hers. Like Alicia, I run in the winter, exercise my dog, and it's really cold in the mornings. And so it'd be nice not to have to be bundling up and unbundling before school.
I'm Megan Talbot and I teach second grade at Basalt Elementary, and I'm looking forward to taking college trips over spring break with my daughter.
Yay. Fantastic. Thank you all. I love hearing what people are excited about because it starts to get my head a little bit out of this. I live in Denver and we've got a bucket of snow falling today, but when I left, we've entered the brown phase of winter where the snow is brown, the grass is brown, everything just looks a little bit sad and dead. So I'm grateful for new snow because it makes it look at least fresh and cold, not just dead and cold. I don't know. So it's nice to start thinking about there is more than this and it's coming. So thank you all for sharing those. Okay. Yes.
I'm wondering if that sounds like you all weren't audible on the mic. Maybe make sure that mic's turned on.
I think the button should be on top. Possible that's off because we stole it from over here. Okay. Okay.
Check it real quick. Maybe say.
Are the other ones green?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm awaiting feedback.
Okay. Keep us posted.
And do we want to do kind of tech check or do we want to roll forward? I don't know what to do with this.
Maybe we should do what is great. Make sure we don't get it.
Do we know with the PowerPoints, are folks going to log into the Zoom meeting in order to share their screens? Yeah, okay, great. Does everybody who is planning on sharing a PowerPoint have the Zoom link available? Okay, great. Does somebody want to try doing that just so that we can see that it's going to work in the room in here and for our colleagues on Zoom? Thank you. That mic.
It's you, Grant.
Let's see. We should be able to.
I feel like, can we just hold these?
So
Like,
it's a webinar, eh?
But this. Probably.
Probably what we're gonna have to
I
do
don't know if I could
is,
like.
um,
Downstairs.
who's gonna be our tester?
Yeah.
Have you joined the Zoom meeting?
Yep.
Oh, Nathan, thank you. I'm gonna make Nathan. What if I do that? Nathan, are you able to share? Hello, can you hear me?
Sing us a song, great.
I believe I need to. Can you hear me? Will share your screen now?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll just need to upgrade. We're gonna screen post of the meeting. Just need a little second of a transition in between things to make sure we can get that going. Great.
Are all the mics working?
Angie, how?
Cause his is red.
screen?
You hear?
So the way I did that.
Do you want us to test them or not? Are we good?
Can everybody see the presentation on the?
I thought we were gonna
Zoom?
sing the Whitney Houston song.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone take a.
Do you know
Show
what
them
these
all the
are these just?
sense inside. Can make it.
No, but was- Oh, we're in business. Okay. But when it comes time, if you wouldn't mind, the easiest way to do it, here, leave this up here. So these are all the people that are just on Zoom. So let's say Mary Kate needed to share more, you promote to panelist, and then a panelist or a co-host can share their screen.
Okay.
Oh, it's been cannot. Support with that switch. Awesome, thank you. Okay. Great, and sorry, did we get confirmation that mics are okay? Okay, great. And so just a reminder for folks, the mics are not actually amplifying your voice, they're only making you audible to the Zoomies. So if you can make sure that you are speaking nice and loud in this space, even though it feels weird to shout into a microphone, we need to make sure that we can all hear each other in the space as well. Okay, cool. So before we dive into our group work, we wanted to do a little bit of kind of coming all together and community building. So scattered around, you see little stacks of Post-it notes. I would like to invite everybody to take a Post-it note. And on that Post-it note, I would invite you to write down the answer to this prompt. The 2023 IBB process will be a success from my perspective if fill in the blank. So what does success look like for you in this process? And write you don't have to put your name on it, just put your response on your Post-it note. People need markers. I don't have pens, but I have markers. Anything else? Yeah. Toxic or yeah. Nice. Okay, and once you have written down the answer to that prompt, I would like to invite you to take your Post-it and put it somewhere in this room. Anywhere. It can be on the floor, on the wall, on a chair, on a snack, wherever you want. Take your Post-it and put it somewhere. Just make sure you remember where you put it. Okay. Once everybody is back in their seat. I would now invite you, I'm gonna tie two of these together. I'm a little spatially unaware today. I'm going to invite you to count off into 4 groups using head, shoulders, knees, and toes. So we will start over here with Nathan. You are head, knees, toes.
Okay.
Shoulders, knees, okay. Shoulders. Okay. Now I would like to invite you to find your matching body parts. So heads, find the heads, shoulders, find the shoulders, and join me in this center here. Not just yet. This one looks smaller than that one. Once you've found your body parts, find a weapon, do anything with it. There will be another piece coming over here. Need to make it happen. Okay. Once you have found your body part, friends, that's a big one. All right. With your body part camera to 2-part challenge. Part 1 is need to get this webbing off the ground without hands. Once you have done that, as an amoeba ground and the goals of the people or the success post-its of the people in your group. So when you get to somebody post, you will read on to find the post-it. Okay, so you got to get the got to keep it off the ground while you try each other post-it notes. You all need to be touching. Yeah, everybody needs to have contact with the webbing. No arm. Sorry, no arms, no hands. Oh, that's risky around the neck. Well done, friends. Safety first. Pass them.
Got a little competitive there. Could happen. We had to pass the other amoeba. The healthy.
Yeah, to project.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm curious to hear some thoughts first. What did it take in order for you to support each other in gathering your successes? Okay, communication, yes.
Sharing ideas.
Uh-huh,
Collaboration.
uh-huh,
Being open to hearing others' ideas.
great.
Get to know the goal.
Uh-huh,
Trying things.
yeah. Fantastic. Excellent. So as we continue to head down the road of formalizing your recommendations through this process, hopefully we can keep some of those things in mind, right? That we are here to be competitive in a spirit of being successful together. We are here to collaborate. We are here to communicate. We are here to try new things and to trust other people's ideas, even if they're not yours. I saw different levels of risk taking, from the webbing around the ankle to the webbing around the neck. I've never seen the neck before. I gotta say, it made me a little anxious, but I'm glad everyone's okay. So I think thinking through also your risk tolerance and your willingness to literally put your neck out and to try things in a different way. And thinking through how we kind of collectively lift up what could be success in this process. So thank you all for participating in that. I would love to hear some of what success looks like. So not from all of you, but if anybody in particular wants to share what they wrote on the Post-it, or if there was a theme in your group, what came out as you all were talking about these things?
All of us said. Well, most of us said, benefits to teachers.
Great.
We weren't all teachers.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Any other themes come out in any of your groups?
We talked a lot about trust and about listening to teacher voice.
Awesome. Trust and listening to teacher voice. Thank you. Great. Okay. All right. Well, we are at the midpoint, which means hopefully your groups have made really wonderful progress. Our hope is that we're going to kind of split this up in two different opportunities to share out. So I understand some or maybe all groups have put together PowerPoints. Awesome. What we would love is to start by kind of walk us through your PowerPoint, or if you don't have one of those, walk us through where you're at. What has your group been working on? Have any of the language or have any of the word choices changed since our first conversation together? How are you feeling about where you all are landing? And we'll just start with that. We'll see how that goes. And then part two, unless this is already woven into your presentations, is we do want to take some time today to think through if there are any things that are coming up in your conversations that you feel like will require more conversation when we start to get to the Fist to 5 in March. We want to start having those conversations today, just so that we can start to lay that foundation. So if it is not yet woven into your PowerPoint, don't go into that piece yet, because we'll do that after we've kind of talked through the high level overview of where we're at. So it looks like we have a group already teed up. Do you all want to be our first group?
Sure.
Great.
We actually asked because Autumn has to leave in a
Oh, okay.
Perfect. So who is in the Zoom that I should make a panelist in order to share screen? Okie dokie. Thank you. It's not.
While we're getting this going, does anybody know if our school board member is joining us? today?
Catherine Donald.
Catherine Delmar.
Kenny
Kenny
is-
Donald.
And Stacy, are you able to share it on Zoom? Okay, awesome. Great. We've got it over here, Jesus. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're group 3 and we got interest 3 and 4, which was.
Hold on, Stacy, can I interrupt you just 1 second? Because we don't have it yet in the room. I know it was, and then it went away.
Sure. Yeah. We just shared with everybody so that. Yeah.
Or Stacy, could you plug your computer back in? Because yours was working in the room and we've got Jesus on the Zoom. Yeah. We're gonna get there. Okay, yes. Good team, thank you.
So we're group 3, and we address the right-sizing teacher workload and ensuring teacher professional development is strategic and effective. And so I'll give a quick, this is the language here, it's also captured in the handout. And so we spent while just thinking about it, just understanding a little bit more and learning more about the challenges that are there. And so these are the ones that I know were shared in our last meeting. So we made an effort to address all of these in our group. And so one of the big things is to address the workload interest is a suggested change from our group to non-instructional days or student non-contact days. And so this would include potentially changing structure for existing non-instructional days. This could potentially include additional non-instructional days, potentially adding some mini-school days if we needed to, if the result of adding some non-instructional days meant that we were not putting them. So these are some of the considerations that we discussed. One of the key things we looked at both to address teacher workload and then the professional development was a big thing actually is looking at where current or for this year workdays were scheduled because of the shift in trimesters for elementary and middle. The designated workdays didn't always line up at a time that made no sense, especially around some things like that. And the original plan that I think was agreed upon to a lot, it turned out people to some of that time was not sufficient. As you know, it takes more than an hour and a half or 2 hours in case it's grades for students. And then the other big piece was we could, in terms of professional development, actually look at the idea of data days. Oh, sorry. Great. Casey, before you go, could you go back to the 3 things that you have on the previous?
Can you hear? Can y'all hear me over there? Is it amplified? Nope. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. Well, let me. Okay, great. In terms of the professional development, we wanted to explore the idea of having the data analysis and response days. And so one of the things that we discussed is that we give assessments, don't always have time, enough time actually to analyze and do something about that data. And so doing that would be supportive of planning responses the student needs. One of the, not caveats, but considerations is having a tighter assessment schedule, identifying which ones it would be, especially across levels, and then an efficient and easy to use data platform that would support teachers not spending a ton of time trying to like capture all the data in Excel, for example, but really thinking about what are all the enabling structures that would help support this. These are with the data days and work days. This is an idea for the currently identified PD days and work days that are on the calendar. And I'll go through what our proposal or ideas are for when these would happen. So in the 23-24 calendar that was decided last year, there's already identified days for non-instructional days. Some of them are identified already as PD days, or some of them are identified as work days. And so because elementary and middle are currently on trimesters and high schools are on semesters, and the current calendar designation of work days would fall, I think, around the semester time. December 21st is one of the days that's already marked on the calendar. So an idea is that that would actually be a data day for elementary and middle, because that is a time when the mid-year assessments are given. Dibbles is given around the time, a whole slew of them. And actually several of our elementary folks said, we spend the time anyway, actually trying to analyze, respond, and make those groups so that we can have some intervention groups right when we come back from the break. And then that would remain a work day for high schools because we know that's the end of the semester, and it would still be kept for grading and things like that that are set. And then the January 8th day consideration is to have half morning PD for all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, or a data day for high schools. And then afternoon allotted for work time, for teacher work time, or could alternatively be an afternoon data day for high schools. April 22nd is the third non-contact day on the current calendar. And so around that time in the spring, all levels would have either PD or data day at that time. And part of that is because currently the spring conferences and report cards are actually much earlier than that. It's in February. We also looked at the calendar to identify possible additional new non-instructional days, and we came up with 3. October 11th is one. I believe that is, correct me if I'm wrong, the end of the first trimester. Sorry, the quarter. And so it identified that as a possible work day for high schools and then a data day for elementary and middle. So if you look back at the this previous one where the days already identified, it'd be October and then December for data days for elementary and middle. November 10th is currently the end of the first trimester. And knowing that one of the biggest challenges that was named is enough time for preparing for report cards, conferences. And so identifying that as a potential work day for elementary and middle and the data day for high school. And then March 1st at all levels would identify that would be a work day for all grades because it's the end of the trimester. And it's 2 weeks before the end of the quarter and 2 weeks before conferences. And so that felt like a good time to get all the preparations for grades, conferences, things like that. I also don't know if we typically stop for questions, but you'll just let me know. Okay, thank you. So these big picture, these additional PD days was an idea was to address what's currently once a month district ERW to about 4 times, half days 4 times a year. It is not to completely eliminate ERWs, but it does have some considerations here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about format and then just share a little bit of what do we do with those once a month if we potentially shift to half days 4 times a year. a couple of format ideas we discussed at length, whether this would be fully in person, fully virtual, some combination. And so we have a couple of options. And so it could be hybrid, where if there's collaboration across different schools at a particular level, the school or grade teams can meet at their school site, but might collaborate virtually at other schools. So an entire grade team or the school might meet in their library, but be projecting, and then they can communicate with other schools. Could be in person, where teams meet at a central location, or it could be virtual, where teams are meeting fully virtually. One of the things we did also think about is if we're doing a half-day PD, for example, and then half-day workday, then doing a hybrid mode, for example, could help with the travel time in between, if the afternoon is going to be workday on site. And then some other considerations are that there has been a wide range of feedback on our current ERW, our district ERW structure. And some departments really truly value and appreciate that time. And so folks asked about whether we could still have some, like a standing time for folks who do want to meet during what was previously just the district monthly ERW time. And this would allow school leaders to know, for example, second, third, and fourth Wednesdays are school specific. The first one might be where departments might choose to meet if they want. We also needed to consider required trainings that happen throughout the year that might not actually fall, quote, as neatly in a designated PD day. Things like for READ Act, asset access training, et cetera, that do need to happen at specific times of the year. And then giving this time back to teachers to relieve workload. And so this would look like once a month, then it's reserved for teacher work time. So some things that are lingering, still need to work on, or maybe not working on or addressing, are a few things that came up in terms of themes. And so we're not addressing crew, capstone, or outdoor ed because this felt like a very school specific or part of broader district strategic planning process versus an IBB subcommittee item. And so we are not making or communicating any kind of direction or decision on whether schools should or can or things like that in this for this work. And then another question we had are trimesters working? I know that this was the first year where a shift to trimesters happened, or do we need to consider moving back to quarters? Some of the considerations that I think came up at our last meeting and definitely in our group was, I think the original intent was to have 3 reporting periods, but then now there's 6 for some, I think, potentially progress and then trimester. And then conferences in the spring, which are currently scheduled for February, felt a little late. And so a note from our high school representatives was that it felt late with trying to get seniors to graduate. And then, is it March? Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. It's March. We did talk about, can we move it to February? Yeah. And then it also felt like if conferences are not really aligned with reporting periods, then we're either asking teachers to do more work with another reporting period or not having much clarity on what information is included in that report card. And that's it.
I'm just gonna hold the whole thing. I'll take that back in a second. Why don't we pause right now and see if there are any clarifying questions? So if there are questions that are gonna dig into why is that your recommendation, let's pause on those. So anything that you need clarified from this first group before we move forward.
In our group, by the way, we found a mistake in December 2023 calendar. Has that been fixed online already? I pulled it up, it looks like it might be. So if you're looking at the old calendar, you're off on a day with this number. So that's why the date's like a little off. I had that wrong. It's kind of big mistake. Thank you.
And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, clarifying, so there would still be ERW every week, but 4 times a year, it would be a half day.
Not necessarily on a Wednesday. I think the dates we identified are either like a Friday or a Monday.
Oh, okay. Could
Yeah,
be
so
any
students
point.
would still leave early on Wednesdays every Wednesday.
Okay, and then 4 times in the year, there would be a half, okay.
I have a question too. So for the district one that's reserved for the district, if teams choose to meet, they do, and if they don't, then it's just the teachers have extra work.
I think, yeah, in most cases, yes, there were a couple departments and folks said, I actually really appreciate that time because I don't have anyone else in my building to collaborate with, and it'd be nice to have a regular time to meet. And so we thought that consistency, almost like office or a standing meeting, that's what it was. It wasn't office hours, it was more like a standing meeting option.
Any other clarifying questions? Yeah.
I have one. You might have actually said this at the very beginning, but could you just elaborate on data day? I'm not like a big spreadsheet guy. I like those people. But I'm like having a hard time imagining what I'm gonna do for that 7 hours, or whatever.
Yeah, it wouldn't be 7 hours. That's one thing, but
Well, is it a whole day though? Like
it's
if
a
I-
whole, it's
yeah.
a whole day, but not necessarily the entire day looking at data.
Right.
One of the things that we had discussed was we give assessments, right? And
Yeah.
so currently folks use either like a common planning time or potentially ERW time that feels a little short to on their own time to analyze and respond to data, or they just get to analysis and discussion and actually don't have time to say like, okay, I'm going to plan my next 6 weeks and create materials and things like that.
Yeah.
So a chunk of it ideally would actually be planning and response time, because you've had that time to analyze, review, think of, discuss with your colleagues, hey, what are we going to do about X, Y, and Z? What are we going to prioritize? And then time to actually do something about it.
Yeah, that's great. And that actually makes a lot of sense. I just like imagining, and I think it's a good idea. Another thing that, a lot of teachers have data that's needed as part of their evaluation project or whatever. So you guys might just think about that, like you letting, because there's like teacher teams that do like their own little experiments or whatever. But yeah, just I as a teacher, I would appreciate like some protocols and some assistance and then maybe some different options of whatever.
Yeah.
I totally think it's needed. I just couldn't imagine. I was trying to visualize that day.
Yeah, we talked also about supports as in like here are like some trainings on how to have a strong data day or some protocols you can use or planning, things like that.
Yeah.
I think to respond to the different types of data you might get.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other clarifying questions? Thanks.
I have a few things I wanted to just ask more about. You said earlier on that you might consider adding minutes to days if we weren't doing enough
Yes,
hours or something. So I'd like you to talk more about that, please.
Sure.
And then also wondering about if you could clarify which data would be the data that would be analyzed and which teachers would be the teachers who would be doing that analyzing. It feels like some teachers might be really left out and not really feel very productive if we're doing this data set X. Whereas if we pick data set Y, other teachers might feel unused. I don't know, that's not the right word, but unproductive. Yes, I guess, again, I'll say that, but so I guess I'd like you to speak more about that too. Yeah, I have other questions, but that's not clear. They're not clarifying.
great. So the minutes question for elementary, there's already more than enough required instructional minutes that are set by the state. Middle, it's pretty tight, and high school, very tight slash not meeting requirements in some cases in terms of the minimum instructional hours. And so if we're adding on another student contact, non-student contact day, and not extending total number of teacher work days, because it would stay at 185, then in order to meet the minimum minutes, it might need to be particularly in high schools, this is a challenge, like 5 minutes a day or 3 minutes a day or something like that to actually get enough time to have enough instructional minutes to have another non-student contact day. Our elementary schools have more than enough minutes. So it's really, I think it would be a question for middle and high. The second question in terms of the data to analyze, I think this is actually part of a need to be more intentional, because today, when we think about the data that we have or the structure of what that data day could look like, I wouldn't say it's 100% of the time every single kid has taken the same assessment. This is the only one we're looking at. It could be that we're looking at school-wide performance on a particular assessment, like for an elementary school, you gave Dibbles Edel, you might look at that. And in terms of planning, there's likely other unit assessments, other module assessments, and other subjects that you've given around that time. And so if that's your core planning or teaching area, you'd have that time in either your department or your team to dig into that data. And so the goal here is that we're not like all meeting together for the sake of it or just looking at one, but really being intentional about the assessments that we're pulling out. Whether in that time the leader might say, hey, this like progress is important for the school to know, but the planning might actually be aligned to your own like planning or content area. Yeah. And I think that would be one. And I would love to invite any of the folks that are in our group to also chime in.
Anybody want to add anything or any additional questions? Yeah.
Like clarifying for the data, like for the CLE department, like we're looking at writing samples, like writing assessments. And we look at the word measures, looking at language, and for each one takes a long time. So that's a time like that we could do, and managing for. Yeah.
Yes. Steph, Nina, Shalisha.
I think Megan was saying.
I have a lot more questions about why do this or why that, but they're not clarifying questions.
I
More
have,
discussion about it.
yeah, I have kind of a big picture clarifying question and maybe some feedback for your group. I'm kind of having trouble wrapping my head around the shifting of hours or days. And so if you could provide some actual numbers for like, we took this many hours from ERW and turn them into this and maybe in a calendar format, that would be helpful. But just big picture, I'm still not clear on how this is reducing teacher burden, because it almost sounds like increasing when we start talking about new data teams and analysis and more minutes in a day. That concerns me.
That's been a topic, like, how does that add more?
I'm gonna ask Laura to capture that comment. Hopefully, Laura in the abyss, you hear me. If you can capture that comment, that question about how does this movement actually shift teacher workload, and we'll dig into that in the second part.
So Rob, are you saying like, if we take for sake of argument, the first Wednesday is 2 hours. And you're getting those every month, add that up for you to show you how many hours you're getting back in personal time. And then how much more it's costing you in minutes that got added onto your day. Or in the time that you're now sitting and having. Or you will ask you for both. Well, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I have another clarifying question. I would like, I guess, to have clarity on the purpose of the ERW. Broadly based, whether it's school-based or district-based.
You mean like the every week?
Yeah. Why are we doing them? Well, it seems like they should be the same unless we're changing our focus, but
would it be helpful for like other members, not necessarily on that subcommittee, to respond to like maybe Grant, you might respond from your perspective about the value or not of ERWs? Same with other teachers or administrators not a part of this group.
Was all my other brilliant stuff missed?
We witnessed it, Grant, though.
So that's my thinking right now, Dr. Rodriguez.
Are we at ERW or data? I'm confused. What was the question, Dr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, just about the value of ERWs. I wasn't a part of the teacher workload subcommittee, but it sounded like the essence was we're leaving ERWs largely as is. So we're not shortening or them or making them longer or taking some out or moving them, but rather adding a few additional non-student contact days so that teachers have more time to do the work of like entering grades, for instance, which currently with our current ERW structure doesn't allow for teachers to have enough time
At the right
time that isn't like their personal time, right? Like I heard of a lot of teachers who were like considering taking personal days around report cards to enter them. And so I think it sounds like the addition of the non-student contact days is so that teachers could have time to do that work and not have to do it outside of hours or not as much of it outside of hours. And so I think Megan's question, it sounded like, why are we doing ERWs? But it didn't sound like the group discussed, you know, the possibility of leaving them. It sounded like you all discussed, we're keeping those, but adding more time.
We had conversations about the calendar, we had conversations about crew and capstone and whether we as an IBB group have the right or the ability to remove things. But you guys are about to do a massive strategic plan in a year. And so one, we didn't think we could really amend the calendar. And two, if we pull it out now for sake of argument, we thought we had that power, is it going to be put right back in? But I do think, to Meg's point,
right,
that with the strategic plan, we need to have a conversation about ERWs as a whole. And I feel like right now, maybe our subcommittee, and correct me if I'm wrong, team, we're trying to put a Band-Aid on a situation till we can have the bigger conversation.
Hmm.
And I also added from that team, we captured a lot of the information that was shared in our whole group meeting around frustrations with workload. And a lot of it was with that misalignment between the calendar with trimesters and when they had to do things like reporting and, you know, writing, you know, comments and conferences. And so that was a big, like, I guess, push from us on some of the decisions we made around this, you know, not eliminating structures, just like changing the how the structure.
In response to, I think the data that Rob shared when we first started about the effectiveness of ERWs.
Yeah.
Is this to adjust making them more effective? Got it.
That and the work, we're trying to marry the two.
Yeah.
And back to the district ERW point, we thought maybe reducing it to 4 times a year versus the amount we have now might be a step in the right direction.
Especially with giving teachers that time back, because if they're not traveling at all and they're just in their building, you know, that's like you were saying, if it adds up 2 hours a month. And then, you know, what is it, 9 or 10 months, right? It's a decent amount of time back.
I don't understand where that time comes back. Maybe I just need more clarification on that, but I feel like what you're saying is, say we took out the one district ERW a month, and there are 8 or not, what, 9 a month, 9 a year. And then we put those into these half-day days a year. Isn't that the same amount of time?
But a lot of the days were already on our calendar. So like you already were going to PD during that time. We're just saying like how that PD is gonna be used. It's more strategic,
I think,
right?
no, instead of having 8 district ERWs, there's gonna be 4.
That's the same amount of time.
No, 4 ERWs Wednesdays. The other 4 that would have been ERW per district will be teacher time.
So that
We're
time,
not talking about the half-day instructional, just talking about 4 Wednesdays a year will be district rather than.
No, they're 4 times, they're 4 half days because and using it differently. So it's not like, even if we have an ERW time from, let's say, 2:15 to 4, with travel and coming in when to start, what we had heard and seen in survey notes was, by the time I get there and by the time we start, it's like an hour, it's like 90 minutes. It's not enough time to finish much. It feels disjointed. So we're thinking, how do we give actually then some continuous time for PD, for example? Less often, but a little longer. But that time, you're right, would then be condensed into, let's say, 4 times a year, half day, versus 8 times a year, 2 hours intended. But the point here, which is under other considerations, is give that time back to teachers. So it's like once a month, actually get that time back for planning, let's say. Some folks in some departments did feel strongly they did want to have that option to meet together as a department. And so that could be a standing time that's not necessarily required for every teacher, but it's a time throughout the year that you don't have to wait, until PD day or stuff to actually meet. We did, and I put here considered when there are some things that would need to happen. So that's consideration. The other thing too is currently put on the calendar, wouldn't necessarily have to wait right to be like my work. But hopefully then actually the time itself, especially if we're trying to split like half day PD, half day workday, it comes a little bit more often. It's longer than like half an hour after school, or hopefully less personal time for things that just take a longer amount of time.
Okay, I'm gonna ask any other questions, write them down. Sorry, we've got to move forward. I want to make sure.
Quick reminder to use the mic. They've got a few messages from
Thank you.
online.
So I'm going to give folks just a second. If you want to write down additional questions, please write them down. I want to make sure that all 4 of our groups have an opportunity for equal sharing today. So who would like to? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, but we can't, they can't go on if they haven't heard our concern. They can't go on and continue to do their work if they haven't.
I agree. Part 2 of our conversation today is digging into concerns. We wanted to get a high level of all 4 before we start getting too far into the weeds, because otherwise we want to make sure that we hear from all 4 groups. So the hope was presentation, clarifying questions of all 4, come back around to what is standing out to you all as challenges and how do we need to continue to provide people information. If you would rather keep digging in, I'm just aware that we are at 4:15 right now. So we can do another 5 minutes on this group if we want to. That probably means there is no circle back. So now we're looking at 25 to 30 minutes per group right now, which means that's going to be it for our day. So I will ask you all.
Just process, I mean, this is never the way we've done it before. We give the time that we need.
Okay.
So if we need to continue talking about it, that's always been part of IBB, is like the motto has been go slow to go fast. And we don't want to sit here for hours and hours, but we do need to resolve things.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And so, and I mean, I know we're scheduled to go till 6, but I mean, we always try and wrap things up in a reasonable time, but if we need to keep going, we need to keep going. So, I mean, I would prefer we continue and just finish the topic. It's not, I'm not saying we have to spend hours on it, but
Okay.
to me, it would feel weird to go to another group and then try and remember what we're talking about. We're kind of in a loop here.
Great.
We have like an agenda of those times that's somewhere, like how much time we have for each group to circle back, or was that just like?
It's not a set time. Our hope was that this was going to be about 5 to 10 minutes of share out per group, and then some time to regroup with your own group to come up with kind of questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, and then circle back. But if you would rather keep plugging through, we can certainly keep plugging through.
Do you think we need to be aware that about equity of time for the group? So I think, yeah, we want to finish the topic and then move forward to the topic. We've set them in end times. Because I know we're all passionate about it. We probably can talk for, hours on each one.
I
So,
think
like,
we need to ask the group if they have enough information to move forward, because right now, if we were doing the fist of 5 on this, I could not support it. I just don't feel like I'm clear enough on certain aspects of it, and I still don't feel like the core of this group was reducing teacher burden, and I don't feel like that's happening.
I also wonder if we're going like something from IBB, so.
I still feel fairly new to the process. And I'm wondering if there's ways that people can share feedback through mechanisms outside of the clarifying questions or discussion, more of a pulse check or things that we can give back to your subcommittee to discuss. I don't know if you've ever had any mechanisms for that before.
I think what we tend to do is ask the questions and state the things that we want more information on, but we don't have to solve the problem here. Like there are things that I would like to encourage that this group continue to look at. And I'm not saying let's figure out the solution, because that's their subcommittee's work to do it. But, and I think that's a way we can do those things and do them relatively efficiently. Like I would like to say that I would like to encourage this group to continue to look at using these days anytime that teachers are having to come together in a flexible way, because we as IBB reps hear from teachers that they don't like to be told that they have to go somewhere and do something. And to me, from what I'm understanding, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but I'm kind of seeing this as very prescribed, and it almost sounds top down. Like here's the day for data, and you're going to do data today. And I'm thinking as a teacher, like, well, I really could have used this right after we did BOI for my dibbles, and I don't see a time for that built in. And I can see me being like mad that I have to go sit and do data at a time that doesn't work for me. And so I think that I would encourage your group to continue to find ways to make this time that we're requiring teachers to have additional out of classroom time, make it be flexible and make it be something that is valuable to teachers. And whether that's making the time of it flexible, or making the subject of it flexible, or making the location of it flexible, those are all things that we hear from a lot from teachers that they get upset about. So, and I'm not trying to propose a solution. I just would encourage your group to continue to look at those things.
Could we, I like that you're posing questions for discussion. Could we do kind of a speed round where we're posing questions to your subcommittee that then you take back and discuss? Like one I heard Nathan's voice was, does this truly reduce teacher workload? And I don't think we can solve that today.
Well, and I'll just jump into like piggybacking on what Rob said earlier. What would really help me is a visual where it's like, here's the total minutes of Wednesday afternoons all year and what they've been used for. Here's the total minutes of IDD days and what they've been used for in the previous, and then we compare that to what we're doing now. And I think that would be a very clear way for everybody to see, oh yeah, last year teachers had 175 minutes of time in their room to do their grades, et cetera. This year we're going to have 200, just to see it that way is the thing I think that would clear up a lot of this stuff.
Does this group have estimates for how many minutes would be added to the elementary day, the middle school day, and the high school day if we add 3 additional non-contact days?
I don't think elementary would need any. I have to confirm that. At most would be 10 minutes. Every day. At most it'd be 10 minutes, I think, for. Oh, can you hear this? All the mics. Think about 10 minutes, basically 10 minutes a day equated to 4 full additional non-student contact days if we need. I think Kenny did that calculation.
And is that for both middle and high? Would be 10 minutes?
Well, the 10 minutes is, that would net us.
Yeah.
For any level, for example, the 4 days. I think we'd have to do specific calculations for high school, middle, and elementary.
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, and I think one thing maybe for the committee to think about is the planning time versus ERW time. Because I think what I hear is the flexibility. And one of the things I know that gets challenging in terms of teacher workload is it is an expected part of the job to analyze data and respond to student needs, and grade and plan and do all the things that are required for this job. Yet there's planning time and then there's ERW time, and ERW time ideally is meant to grow professionally and accomplish some of those goals. And so I feel like what the committee is trying to do is marry the idea of planning time, ERW time, and try and find that perfect blend to balance all of those things. And so I think one thing that was a bullet point on here was fair and appropriate planning time at every level. And so, but that wasn't really brought up much on this PowerPoint at all. And so my curiosity is, how does planning time, which is flexible, because right now, sometimes I am asking my teachers to analyze data in their planning time, with their teams. And so if they want that time back to be more flexible, then where does that go? Hopefully not in the evenings or after school or something, So I think that would be maybe something to clarify, is like, what current flexible planning time do we have? ERW time, what is it being used for, and how do we use it to accomplish all of the things that we're trying to accomplish as educators in the appropriate time that doesn't feel overburdened and overwhelming. So maybe looking at that.
Hi, I wanted the subcommittee to just take into consideration. I know ERW, the purpose is collaboration. And for some departments, there's like department leads, but for CLDE, we have a facilitator, so I feel like it's more structured. And so just keep that into consideration when you tell a teacher that's the department head or department lead that maybe doesn't have so much time, where you have somebody that this is their job, is to be the facilitator. Just keep that into consideration. Thank you.
I think Adam did a good job of summarizing my clarifying questions, but one of the other things that I heard was the feedback we got about report card comments, and part of that conversation was that the days were not aligned with the reporting period. But I think a lot of that frustration also came from just the sheer amount of report card commenting that was being asked of teachers. And so I would encourage your committee to explore the value of report card commenting and see how that aligns with that teacher workload and if it's really worth it, or if there's some way to actually reduce the actual amount, not just to marry the time allowed.
Okay, any other clarifying questions or things to add to the consideration list?
I just want to be really clear that I think that it is written somewhere that ERWs do have a specific purpose, and I would encourage your group to find that, whether it's in previous IBB documents or it must be in previous IBB documents from when we originally set about with the ERWs, but I just think being really clear and understanding what that purpose is can help us figure out what is the best way to spend these days or times.
Okay, awesome. Any final thoughts on group one? Great, thank you. All right, who would like to go next?
Can I just ask a process question while we're in transition? One is just, I, as a meeting person, like to know if there's going to be a break or something like that. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh, I'm talking into the mic. Yeah, it's just like to know like the flow and if there's going to be a break, that kind of thing for a long meeting like this is useful. Secondly, it feels a little weird to me, like in the past in IBB, you guys are all over there in the corner and we're over here, and it's like the Senate Judiciary Committee like questioning you. And that's unprecedented. Usually everybody's all mixed in. And so I'm just making that comment that it to me, I feel like that physical structure. Yeah, you're tied to the.
I think we're all here because we have to present.
I know, but I'm just saying that changes the dynamic a little bit. Probably like
You can come join us.
yeah. So I'm just pointing that out.
Yes, of course.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Yes. I'll go back though.
It's also on.
All right, so we are the Salary and Benefits Committee. Anyway, the topics we're supposed to cover this year: certified teacher salaries, as well as reviewing pay for other duties with special attention to overnight trips, the guest teacher rates, rates for absorbing and subbing for classroom teachers who do that across the district, and then district employees acting at. So to kind of set the stage for this year, majority of the funds we have to work with come from per pupil increase. So for the current fiscal year 23, we're looking at about a $10,000 per pupil amount to help increase year over year. We'll kind of get to how that trend.
Nathan, can you speak up? It's hard to hear you.
Can we change this format? Like this is, I'm sorry, this is a terrible format.
Close the circle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just push David.
And I thought these projected now, like what's, we spent $50,000 on. It's super long.
Down into $2,000, so
A lot of rope. Far apart as we could possibly be. Hopefully, I was like shouting.
Thanks for naming it and making it better.
Can you hear me on this microphone?
Mic check 1 2 1 2.
So it's no longer, hello over there.
Yeah. Well, we should be using the right forklift. It's way more intimate than.
Yeah.
This. I'll put it down there going forward. Yes. Okay, so looking forward to next school year 23-24. The update right now, we're looking at per pupil increases in the range of 10%. The most recent data I got was maybe a week and a half ago. And ours is kind of, it's looking at 9.9% what the state is projecting for our per pupil increase next year. Long way to go this budget process at the state. But the last couple of years, what's been proposed has actually made it to the final bill, which is incredible. So to rehash our subcommittee topics, we're going to talk about certified teacher salaries. We'll pay for other duties, special attention to overnight trips and try and provide a framework to there's consistency across the district from school to school. When additional compensation is required. Talking about guest teacher rates, rates and mechanisms for absorbing a student or teachers acting as for other teachers in their school or acting. District employees acting as athletic coaches. So talking about here's some questions that are related to our topics. How should teachers be paid for extra duties? Primarily through stipends, currently other mechanism. Different schools are handling it very differently. What needs to be consistent? How can we minimize disparities between schools? The infusion of new funds, the salary schedule, what does that look like? And what percentage of funds available to certified IBB do we want to allocate for salary increases versus additional compensation? Anybody else from the salary group want to chime in thus far?
Yeah, I don't mind talking about the considerations for extra duties.
Okay.
You you gave us the super fast forward finance report.
Yeah.
Which looks pretty good. And actually, I want to acknowledge real quick, just that on that slide 3, we spent a lot of time talking about pay for extra duties and certified teacher salaries, but we haven't yet really got to discussing absorption, guest teacher rates, and the coaching question. And I think guest teacher rates did come up for a minute, especially because everybody right now is celebrating the beautiful full-time sub in their building. It's like the hero of every building. And that privilege is going to sunset at the end of next school year. So it's something that we need to think about because it's such a blessing. And if we want it to continue, we have to find a way to make that happen. Probably next year's IBB. I don't know.
Right
We-
now, that building guest sub is that permanent, it's ESSER funded.
Yeah.
And so
So
that's
right.
grant funded. Once the grant goes away, that position will go away.
Right. So if we want to keep that, we have to find a way. That I feel like that goes into number 3, like that gets teacher rate question.
And that could be next year. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
say that the cost of the permanent guest teachers is about the budget for our entire guest
Yeah.
teacher program. currently.
Yeah. Which is a consideration. I don't know. It's a huge help in every building. So just to talk, I'll just talk really briefly about the considerations for extra duties, realizing that it's very inconsistent, the way people are paid for doing different jobs. And there is a huge list of jobs that we brainstormed that different people do at elementary, middle, and high school levels. These are things that are outside of your contract duties and contract times. And a lot of them are like the goodness of your heart, which we're trying to do away with that because you should get paid for the goodness of your heart. And so, but just figuring out the problem is been
Nope, I just said to join.
Although. Testing one. Okay. Who's got their speaker? Turn your volume. Oh, there. No. Okay, she said it's back. Yeah. You know what's crazy though is like it's Katie and Kelsey. There's like
I don't think we can see all the people who are on it.
but it's also on YouTube. So yeah. Oh, they can be watching it. Oh, without being logged into the Zoom. Oh, good point. Okay. Okay. Well, she said it's back. So, okay, we're going to go. We're going to keep going.
Do we need to log in?
No.
On Zoom? Okay.
No, you should also have Howie shared the thing and it's still being shared, right? Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to continue on where I was. We were talking about extra duty considerations that we've made, that there are a lot of extra duties. It's very complicated. We looked at a lot of other districts and how they do it, which is also very complicated. So what we did was we are trying to formulate a kind of simple way and flexible way to compensate teachers for extra duties. And so we identified some of the bigger ones that affect more people. Things like overnight trips that several schools take, games duties that are at all the high schools and middle schools, BLT, which most schools have. And then some schools have like department heads or a culture club or the literacy group or there's a whole bunch of other ones. So what we wanted to do, so this is the proposal. Am I clear to just say what we're thinking about here, Nathan? Is we're thinking about, okay, it says potential ideas. This is a brainstorm. Okay, it's not set in stone, but to create an extra duty fund for each school based on a dollar allocation for the number of students in that school. That would be a fund that goes to, is coupled with the general fund, but it's reserved just for paying teachers for extra duties. And it would sunset at the end of every year. So if that administrative team didn't pay that out to teachers, it would go away. And you don't get to take that extra money back into your general fund. It's just gone. That's what it's for. Yeah, right.
So there would be certain duties that we would want as an IBB to agree on minimum amounts. And that's for those big things. Like if you're on the BLT, if you're on an overnight trip, like you shouldn't have one school paying teachers $150 a night to go on an overnight trip and another school paying nothing. And so we want to establish some minimums for the biggest deal extra duties to come out of that fund. And then whatever money's left over in that school, that administrative team can redistribute to other extra duties that people are taking on. Yes.
Do you think teachers would apply to paraprofessionals who do trips or just for?
Paraprofessionals get paid by the hour, so vacation when they go, they stay clocked in.
For 24 hours?
Yeah.
Very expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah. Yeah, which is a little tricky, actually.
And their pay comes out of a different bucket as well, right? It shouldn't come out of our bucket.
Right, it doesn't. No, yeah, that's because that's classified staff. So that's kind of what we were thinking. I just said it all. Allow each school to use remaining funds to pay teachers for other more school-specific duties. One thing that we have to figure out is like, okay, so this is also right now. The IBB agreement is that you can't ask teachers for more than 2 hours outside of school per month. Isn't that right?
Excluding certain things that are federally mandated.
Right, excluding certain things, that are friendly. These two policies, IBB policies, have to meld together, and we haven't quite figured that out yet. Like, if you are are on a BLT and we have a minimum extra duty payment for BLT, but then your administrator says, oh, that BLT is inside the 2 extra hours, so I don't have to pay. We don't know the answers to those questions yet, but we know that we have to figure that out. Yes, unmute.
Yeah, I would say, like, just to kind of summarize too, is one thing, what we identified is that extra duty pay is really important. It varies across the district. Creating some sort of structure. We only met 4 or 5 times, which is 4 hours, 5 hours. It's kind of like trying to create the actual structure and things like that. Is going to be a heavier lift probably to actually create that like from these potential ideas. So, but that's something that like we're working, we would propose working towards. Does that make sense? Just kind of clarify.
No, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
And that's kind of all I have in terms of what we've talked about with the extra duties. So we do have a slide where Howie's capturing questions and feedback about that. So we could either roll through and talk about the salary part that we discussed and then take questions, or we could take questions about this part now. Actually, I'm just going to say, let's roll through because they are connected. And the way that they're connected is that there's a certain amount of money. And so whatever we take out of that to give schools for extra duty pay is that money that we don't put into the salary schedule. And so,
I'll qualify that, yes.
Yeah.
I think we would put in, we start next year, so using next year's allocation.
Yes.
Retro overnight pay or anything like that this year.
Right.
We have some of the, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of this might also come out of our general fund, because currently, like, okay, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, schools that might already have allocations for extra duty pay, right?
If we're making those themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, like, yeah,
Every school pays some sort of stipend.
yeah, so we'd still have that. It
Yeah.
wouldn't come out of the,
You would get an additional allocation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or, yeah.
So, okay, good. So now we're going to go talk about salary schedule scenarios.
Yeah, I still have a question, back to
Yeah.
absorbing kids.
Yeah.
Have we really looked at how teachers in each building are being paid when they absorb kids and like the different kinds of roles? Because sometimes we have teachers who have to become paras because paras aren't there and they're not getting paid.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. Can we when you guys are going through those things, can you look really carefully at how each kind of teacher
Yeah,
is getting reimbursed?
yeah,
Yeah, and we didn't really delve into the absorption or covering of classes. This extra duty stuff really is more along the lines of outside of contract type stuff, like overnight trips, ticket taking at a game, yeah, those types of things, BLT, ILT, yeah. So we didn't quite delve into that just yet, but that's something we can, yeah.
but we do have to, yeah, we still have to talk about that. And Heather's actually brought up like some of the stuff that you're talking about. She's on the same page with you on that too, so.
I'd also just ask as a point of consideration, I'm sure Nathan will carry this torch too, but whatever system you create to consider the burden it's putting on HR and payroll to, pay people and.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, we're paying attention to that for sure. You got that down?
And I would say that is one of the hopes, is like, because every school is doing it differently, that is something that some might get is harder to manage. And so hopefully by creating a consistent schedule, that will make it easier on everyone.
Yeah.
Across the board.
Okay, so yeah, so we'll talk about the salary schedule scenarios and then circle back if you guys have more questions about extra duty pay. Yeah, okay.
So I think I shared this out with everybody in the group. If you click, this is a link on this slide, it'll take you to our workbook that we show every year. What I've got on the upcoming page is just some snapshots from that workbook. So the salary schedule review and process, we gather data from 10 comparison districts as well as front range districts. Our comparison districts are Summit, Aspen, Mesa, Durango, Telluride, Delta, Steamboat, Lewis Palmer, RE2, and Eagle County. We compare each district across a range of different data points. The target is to be in the top third of comparison districts for the average salary, minimum salary, maximum salary, the minimum paid for a master's, as well as a master's plus 40 step 15 are kind of the areas we're looking. So it really covers the entire schedule. Salary schedule considerations for this year was to maintain progress and momentum from last year's MLO fueled gains. A $50,000 starting salary has been achieved at Summit and Aspen. RFSD is hitting that using one-time funds right now to increase all teacher salaries to a minimum of 50. So the question is, can we achieve 50,000 without using one-time funds? So it's really codified in our salary schedule. We want to make sure we keep all targets in mind, not just the average and starting salary. What amounts need to be held aside for other compensation improvements? That's what Adam mentioned earlier. Do we need to hold anything aside for increasing overnight pay, all those sorts of things? And then past feedback has been preference for larger step increases rather than larger lane increases. So what funds do we have available this year? Per the fair share agreement, certified IBB gets 61% of the per pupil increase, or the funds that are available from the increase in per pupil funding. So that equated to $1.9 million this year. The share of the 2021 MLO increase, so that entire mill levy increased by almost $350,000. That mill was passed to pay teacher salaries, so in order to maintain salaries with inflation, that mill levy goes up by inflation. So that's certified share of that to maintain salary gains. What it is? So it says that any increase in revenue from a per pupil increase, a minimum of 61% goes to certified. The rest is for everyone else. And that's based on historically, the percentage of certified salaries are about 61% of the total. Turnover credit, so that in its simplest form is, a teacher with 28 years and MA 70 retires, replaced by someone on step 2 with BA 10. That difference is turnover credit. So you apply that to all the new positions. It's about $290,000. And then we've had really strong revenues outside of total program funding. And so we worked out $625,000. Total new funds to work with, about $3 million, which is a fantastic amount. The step and benefit increases that were realized in the fall used about 700,000, remaining funds available about 2.4. So a very healthy amount of funds to work with.
Can I ask a question on that slide or do you want me to hold it?
No, go ahead.
So I'm looking at the turnover. I'm looking at the turnover credit dollar amount, almost 300K, and thinking about the incentive, the dollar amount that we spend for retirement incentives to encourage those long tenured teachers to retire. And I think it exceeds that turnover credit amount. Is it right of us to see that money as a surplus when it feels like a loss?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, so that
I,
the retirement incentive funds come out of a different account than this.
yeah. At some point they were absorbed and that's just how we do things.
Okay.
We were thinking about that turnover credit. Kind of a random possibility that
You're muted, Adam.
we were thinking about that turnover credit as being the rough amount that we could use for the extra duty pay, which is like somewhere in the range of 10% of the total amount. And so, and I don't remember where that came out in our meeting, but it was just a starting point. So just so you guys know, it's not like half the new monies are going to go into the salary schedule and we're looking at 10%, 90%.
I think what we want to do for the extra duty pay is here are the 5 things we're prescribing a minimum amount, get some feedback from principals and building leaders, then have some additional amount on top. And that'll probably need to be tweaked over multiple budget cycles to get to the right amount. Because that's a wild one, because right now some buildings pay very little, some compensate quite a bit more or for more duty. So it's to equalize, it's going to take some time to figure that out. So the salary schedules we've contemplated are typically, as we have done through this point in our process, we look at the current salary schedule. We do a flat dollar increase. So that's where every step and lane placement receives the same dollar amount, flat percentage. So just like the dollars, except every cell goes up by the same percent. And then looking at a $50,000 base salary, which is pretty darn close to the flat percentage increase. So this is a ton of data to look at. You can see the average salary in every case goes up by about 7.3%. You add in the 1.7% that's realized from step increases in the fall, and you get to about 9% increases in take-home pay for teachers this year. If all the money goes into the salary schedule, which this year it should.
I said 9.
Yeah. So you can see, we look at the BA, so that's the min for our district. BA step 9 was something we looked at last year, so I carried that over for historical purposes. The maximum you can earn with a BA, if everybody remembers last year, we took away the need to earn a master's to move across the schedule. So the BA max, so I think it's probably BA 120 step 30 is approaching $100,000. And then the maximum is basically the PhD. So you're going to earn about $3,000 more than that BA max. Sooner.
And this built in the increase of incoming steps to 12.
That has nothing to do with this.
Okay, but you got a budget for it.
It's already there.
Great.
Yeah, and so we were contemplating like that flat dollar increase, flat percentage, kind of like those. And so you can kind of see the comparisons between the two, which might be helpful in formulating questions and comments and considerations.
The middle ground one, which was the bringing, so last year we had a goal to get the base salary to 50,000 in 2 years. And what we're realizing is that we could reach that goal this year. And then with some other adjustments, that was the, what's that tab called, Nathan? Because I don't have it open, of that third option that we created, is it?
So set the minimum to 50 and then you can put additional money into increasing the amount between each step.
Yeah.
So we can look at that specifically once we look at some of this high level data.
Yeah, that was the one that we all kind of liked a lot, even though there's benefits and drawbacks to all the different scenarios. But we like the idea of reaching that goal early and then still trickling the monies throughout the schedule to benefit people in the middle of their career and at the end of their career.
So this is looking at a lot of the same data, except comparing it to our target. So our target average salary would be 64,359. We're currently exceeding that. The minimum salary, the target would be 48,580. Currently under that amount by about $2,000. The max target would be 107,000 and change. We're quite a bit under that. We get a little bit closer. Same for the MA 40 step 15. I think the big takeaways are that upper end of the pay scale remain quite stubborn for us as a district to, I'm not so as concerned about the max. I mean, we don't have anybody, I think, at PhD step 30. I'm more concerned about that MA 40 step 15, which is a highly educated, long tenured teacher being underpaid compared to comparison districts. Those remain stubborn to move. We put specific new dollars into MA 40 step 15 last year and it still didn't move as much. So it's a little frustrating from that standpoint. So here's the actual workbook Adam was referencing. Everybody can see that. Again, everybody has access to this workbook. So the first tab is going to show you the district comparisons. So I think Megan was very helpful and downloaded all the current year salary schedules for our districts that we compared to. So you can see there's quite a few. That's kind of where we capture the data. You can see the funds available, which we just covered on the slide deck. It just shows you the calculations. And we get into the ranking. So the average salary rankings for the first time since I've been here, at least Summit County is #1 and Aspen is not. We are #3. We ended last year at #2. But since we really undertook this goal of being in the top third, that was 2017-18, we ranked 5th. We have put about 25% more than any other district into teacher salary since. We've really elevated ourselves compared to other districts. And you can see where we rank both on the minimum, maximum, MA step 40, and the MA min. So that's all there. If we want to get into the weeds and the details, we provide the scattergrams. This is the current salary schedule. You scroll down, you get the number of full-time positions in each step on the salary scale. So we've got 9.59 BA step 1. So we've got some folks working part-time there on that step and lane. How much do we pay to each of those? That's simply the first two multiplied by each other. You can see the total teacher compensation. You're just kind of dividing out to get the average salary.
How do we have access to this?
If you go to the slideshow that was shared.
Oh, in our email?
Slideshow. Yeah.
wrong, but this is putting all money into salaries and nothing into extra duties.
Yeah, because again,
These
extra
numbers.
duties is for next year, so I would motion that we, if we're gonna put $250,000 in extra duties, that would come out of next year's fund, basically kind of
Yeah.
pre-spend that.
Yeah.
Again, here's the comparisons. You can go through and look at those. And then this is what Adam was talking about. So it's what we call a sandbox. So you can see the current base 46,595. If you want to change any of these, you just plug numbers into the orange cells and it will change the whole schedule. So you go to the flat dollar increase, you can see we put everything in there, $4,750. Means every cell changed by that amount. Because the salary schedule is huge, you get to scroll quite a ways over. You see that 7.29% total increase. Sorry, it uses $1.9 million of funds for salaries. The corresponding benefits, which is a little over 22%, is 436,000. So use up that total available. See the ranges, the minimum raise in this scenario would be 4.99%. The maximum would be 10.19%. And that average is different, which doesn't make any sense. Enough to self. So in this scenario, the higher end of the pay scale is going to have a smaller percentage change because every cell is changing by the same dollar. Flat percentage increase. This one's a little trickier. I just typed in a flat percentage here, multiplied every cell by that amount, and then tried to back calc what that means for changes in base and lane. So these are more ballpark. Some of them will be really close, and others, hopefully I did the math right. But the idea is here, we're changing every cell by 7.28%. So here you can see the minimum dollars is actually different. So 7.28% means a smaller dollar raise for folks earlier on in the salary schedule than for folks further along. And then the one that we really like the most so far was the $50,000 base. So it sets our minimum salary, codifies it at $50,000, and then puts at least $105 into every step change as well. I think having a $50,000 minimum makes a strong statement, not just as a district, but also as an education association. And that took 2 years to close an $8,000 gap on your minimum, which is fairly incredible.
Yeah, and obviously if you put the money into the top left of the salary schedule, then that infuses all the way across, right? So you can look up where you were, but we like that one because it helps attract new teachers and also retain others. Thank you, Nathan. Are we ready for questions for our part, or clarifying questions or considerations?
Yes.
Yeah, we're done, right?
Do you want to take a quick bio break and or help yourselves to some nutrients?
Yeah, let's do that.
And then come back for like the Q&A.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna take 5.
We do like a 10 minutes, Julia, or 5? Yeah.
That's,
You fixed it already?
well, so this is just taking an average of like this.
Check.
So it just takes an average of all this as opposed to like actually.
for all of you.
So I unmuted my computer. So if you want to talk. An in-person Zoom meeting.
Okay, but it doesn't mean our agreement. I agree to talk about it. You can public access, yeah. Spirit of transparency and all of that.
They can hear us.
I have a question.
No.
Where would that come?
So that's from additional funds we've gotten. I mean, everybody's seen what interest rates have done. So interest, money we're holding is earning interest, additional specific ownership tax that's outside of the total program funds. Those sorts of things is where that money would come. So that's where the additional 625,000 that went in, that's where that came from as well. But looking forward to next year, I mean, we're looking to make some changes in how we get in front of kids, and that's where some of that money would go.
Is that, if you're talking about it coming from additional money, like specific ownership taxes or any of them grants or anything like that, would they be sustainable over time, or would we be to use a phrase that's been used before in previous years, like making puppies that grow up and become dogs that we have to then feed?
So we're going to use as much recurring funds as we can. There might be some money to bridge, half recurring funds, half one-time funds, just say reserves, specifically allocation of reserves. And the next year, we'd be committing to funding that full time as a way to kind of bridge our way to get there. Yeah.
So like in 4 years, any positions that are added now, 4 years, they're going to be
Part of the 61.
Yeah, but that 61% might be 65% because we've added positions and that percentage grows. Like this year, I think I did the calc and teachers are actually 59%, but because there's a minimum, you got 61 to apply to the group.
So I'm wondering about like previous commitments we've made to increasing salary. One of the things we did I don't know, 5 years ago now, was we slightly increased class sizes. Were you here when we did that? So that we could have more money to put into people's salary schedules. So this would decrease the per pupil, right? Wouldn't it? It would change the per pupil ratio.
No, I mean, we're talking allocation ratios for budgets and those aren't changing.
So it doesn't change the, whatever, what are we at now? 17 point something to
The way
one?
we allocate resource, not the way we staff classes, because that's different by school, is general FT is 18.35 students to one teacher, and that stays the same. So I think that was like 17.9, and you increased it to 18.35. That is not happening here to create those new positions.
But what I'm asking is, we at one time said that it was more important for us to have an increase in salary, and so we increased class sizes just a little bit to get that. And right. No. Right. So this would increase our total staff numbers. But you're saying that wouldn't affect our teacher-student ratio?
Not the allocation of resource, no.
I guess I'd like more clarification on that. I don't understand.
So when I look at Grant, he's projected to have 500 kids in his building next year. We take 500 divided by 18.35, and that gives him whatever, 32 point something FTE to allocate within his building. That is staying the same. We're not saying that's going to 20. We're taking that money to create these other new positions. Like it's actually going to be new people in the building or if you have like a half-time interventionist paid for by Title I, we might say, hey, we're just gonna kick in general fund dollars to make that a full-time interventionist. You don't have someone splitting jobs or taking other funds. It'll be a full-time position. Those are the things we're looking at. So it's putting new dollars into schools.
Those new dollars, though, are coming from where? You said specific ownership
Specific
taxes?
ownership taxes, increase in interest, things that are outside total program funds, which is where increases in the 61% fair share comes from. So it's revenues outside of that.
Because specific ownership used to be
There is-
money that would be used for, that would go into.
So there's 3 buckets of specific ownership tax, one of which is total program funds. 2 of those are outside of it. So those are the ones we're talking about. And those are going up because our total mills went up from the last mill levy. And specific ownership tax is allocated based on each taxing authority's like proportional share of the overall mill levy.
I'm still unclear about this. Are you guys unclear about? I don't understand how we can have 40 new positions or whatever it is.
It's not 40 like that. No.
Oh, I thought I heard the number like 44 or something like that.
If you said every single position that we're going to do was brand new and full time, yeah, it'd be like 100 people. It's like $15 million, which we don't have $15 million.
Right. That's why
we're talking about like Grant has a half-time interventionist. Let's make it a full-time. So that's a half a position. You do that across all the elementary schools, it's something like 3.25 total positions to do that piece. And this is going to have to be a multiple budget cycle infusion of money. We're not going to be able to add all the wish lists or even all the needs in one year. Just don't have the money to do it.
And it is money that we are going to then have to fund in the future.
We're using recurring funds to pay for it, so they'll be paid for.
So in the future, we're going to have more positions that our money is going to have to be spread around.
Also, instead of 61%, you might get 65% because that's the certified proportional share of salaries. 61 is the minimum. We do a calc every year. And this year was 59, so the minimum 61. So you got more than the actual proportional share. Going forward, we'll do that calculation.
And that more money would come because money like specific ownership that we're currently using elsewhere would then be allocated to the.
It's still going to be based on the per pupil.
Well, a wondering I have too is like, since our subcommittee didn't talk specifically about that, but I do feel like it is something that a lot of people have questions about. Like maybe that could be like I don't know, figure out how we're going to talk about that. And then maybe because I don't think it's going to impact what our subcommittee is presenting. So if we could maybe just get feedback specifically on what we presented and then, but I think what I hear is that, and what I've heard from my building is people still do have a lot of questions about that topic. So I don't know. I feel like somehow that'll need to be addressed at some point somehow, but probably not tonight.
When your concern is, it may not impact this year's budget towards teacher salaries, but how is it going to impact it next year or the year after? So
Yeah.
if we could see something with that.
Do you want our
projection.
subcommittee to look at that?
Well, Nathan's the money man, so I don't know who else has that question too.
So let's say if we carried this year forward, next year we're looking at around 5 million new dollars for the district. 61% of that is, just call it 3 million. If it's really 70%, you'll get $3.5 million to put into salaries because your proportional share of that new money has gone up. And so you should be able to cover those new salaries as well. It's not saying now it's 3 million divided by more people. It's 3.5 million divided by more.
I think what I'm hearing is a request to the subcommittee to 1, 3, 5-year projection.
Whoa.
Sorry.
Whoa.
Well, I'm asking, because I've heard for clarification.
It's recurring funds that we have. We might piece together with some grant funds to start as we work towards fully staffing those positions or that accelerated learning model. But we're working toward doing that sustainably.
I'd also ask, should non-certified staff, that slice of the pie, would that be impacted as well? Knowing that you talk about 70, then now I'm at 30% of it for half of the staff.
Again, so that 30% is their already overall share of district salary. So it's, everybody's getting their proportional share. As the pie slices change,
But I think they're about 50% of our staff,
but salary wise, not headcount wise, it's not 50-50.
but because the fair share keeps that down. It prevents those salaries from rising anymore. If 61% of the new money always goes to certified staff and that number gets bigger and we still have half of our staff who are non-certified, that's a smaller slice of the pie.
But that half of the staff would account for 30% of total salaries. It's not headcount based. It's dollars we pay to people and benefits we pay to. And so as a group, teachers earn roughly 61% of all the salaries we pay in the district. Everybody else earns 39%. And as that goes up, that will change. So everybody still gets their proportional share of new dollars.
So the certified portion could go up as well.
That's what I'm saying. That's how that would be covered. It's not stuck at 61%. So you're growing your bucket. More people have to be paid for out of that 61, like that, it would grow with it.
But the classified portion, that's the inside.
Like-
The classified portion ever grow?
I mean, the most it can be is 39% because there's a floor for certified.
So adding more certified people and keeping classified people the same, less money that can go to the classified salary.
Again, it's percentage based. So potentially, yes, like I mean,
I think people are just asking what would be your impact, but that's one, and
Yeah,
it's something to grapple with.
yeah, I mean.
I guess I'm
think
the
the big picture. This accelerated learning model announcement came out and it's a little bit unclear, right? There were some people that saw it as the accelerated learning model.
Announcement came out. It's a little unclear. Some people thought, oh, we're hiring 40 extra people to go around. You know, you guys shake your head. That's not the message, like, was misinterpreted. And now you're saying, well, it could be 6. So for us, it's like there's this number of positions being added that's somewhere between 6 and 40, and we don't know. And I'm just telling you that where the confusion is, and it's okay. It's okay that there's confusion because we can fix it. But right now, that's like what the extent of like what people understand. And then we're saying, okay, who's gonna where is that money coming from that's gonna pay those people, and how? If we add to the total number of employees in the district and the money is the same amount, and how does that not take away from the current employees? That's the way that I perceive the confusion. I don't know about that, but that's.
I take a stab at just, but,
I think so. So if you look at all of our schools, for example, most of them have some kind of position that's partially funded. And so it's like 0.7 or 0.5 or something like that. And so schools do either need to like take out of their general funds, for example, to either make it a full-time or like it's a 7.5. Sorry, we have like 4 days a week we can fund you. And so when you look at that across the schools, if we say, okay, we'll kick in, right, the 0.5 that's missing so we can make a full-time position, et cetera, et cetera. So if you imagine there's like one person, let's say, who's partially funded at each campus, but the part that's missing ranges, right, from 0.5, 0.25 or 0.10 or something like that, adding that all up, that's what Nathan was talking about. Like that's a net of, I don't know, about three-ish FTE if you add up all that missing parts across the district. The misinterpretation of the 44 is the assumption that like these are brand new positions that don't even exist, but actually like most of our schools have some kind of intervention, some kind of code, but most of those roles are partially funded. Or so like that's what it is in terms of the cost. And that's why I think like, it's not like between 3 and 45 or even close to that. It's when you think about the adding up all the missing percentages for us to round up, it ends up being about 3.2 across the entire district.
But could it be adding an additional position, like if my school doesn't have a half-time intervention? They want one in some capacity. But, could it be that a school also wants to add a full-time?
I think that would have to be a conversation, yes, with like, what else do you have in your budget that could move around to actually facilitate that?
Okay. So when people are wondering about new positions, some of them could be like making a position whole, but also could be a new position for that building.
Or shifting an existing role if that need is actually phased out, like to turn it into, let's say, an intervention.
You will share the anecdote that.
Opportunity to staff differently.
Yes, we sat down with the principal in December. And this principal been looking at staffing and just as generally schools in our district have shrunk, not everybody has shrunk, Megan. Most of the Carbondale schools have grown, but everywhere else has shrunk over the last 3 years. And so it's looking at, my class sizes were 18 because I had 4 sections. Now they're 13. Now they're 12 in one section and 13 because they've gotten small enough. So it makes sense to reallocate a teacher from that small grade level to be an interventionist for a year and have class sizes of 18 or 19, like those sorts of trade-offs as far as what's best for that school to create those positions. So it's also kind of a reuse of current or a reallocation of current resource to meet.
Building asked this question and I didn't know how to answer it. So I'll pose it. I just wanted to know what, if these interventionists are staff facing or student facing? That was the question posed to me. Like, are they gonna pull kids out of classes to do interventionist work with them separately? Then that would be student facing, right? Versus coaching teachers on how to support the students in their classes.
So those are two separate items laid out in the plan. One was for instructional coaches, which are teacher facing, and one is for interventionists, which are student facing.
Interventionists, am I correct in thinking, are not going to the high school level, or am I wrong in thinking that?
At some point, I think the desire would be to have them there.
But not in this first model.
TBD. We are not allocated all the resource for next year.
It's just like in our current model, we don't have, like, you know how you say, like, you pull from the 0.5 and we don't have an intervention.
And I think that was something that was pointed out by the district accountability committee, is that elementary schools get a lot of support for intervention. You get to middle school and high school and it comes out of just general FTEs. You wind up with larger class sizes to create those sorts of positions. So that's where we're looking to leverage. And needs are also different. You might have, I think something that was in was a dean of like student culture and discipline to kind of take some of that stuff off teachers and admins plates as well. It's just a different need at high school than it is at elementary. So maybe that's the first call at high school. Like I don't know.
Facing that
It would be like a dean of culture to take all the discipline and the engagement and belonging work.
Which, I mean, that position would be, I think, in the way that you framed it, student facing, but it would allow for example, Megan and Cora to be more teacher facing and as instructional leaders and support.
We're talking about additional kind of tier 2 as well as strengthening tier 1 supports. Generally speaking, it's different. We asked every building leader multiple times, what strategic resource do you need to better execute your mission and meet the district's mission? And every building gives you a different answer. So to say, here's the one size fits all for everybody just isn't out there.
At this point, are there specific data points that you all would be given at the final session?
Not necessarily again. You need to get clarity, fair share.
We were told by Shannon that when we went through, gosh, I don't even know, when we went through the 2008 crisis, that we went out of fair share and we never went back in. That was something she said, like we never have gotten back into fair share. And I don't, so, and I've been on that money team for many years, and it was just something that we was just like, we're not in fair share. It was benefiting the certified group somehow, but I don't know how. So I echo what he says, like, I think we need to know more about, and I don't want you to explain it now. I think we need to know that for the group, more about where it comes from, why it changes, what it has been historically in the past.
The last one will be tough. Be real tough.
I had some other requests for your group as well. Am I wrong in remembering that last year there was like money left over that had to be spent or that wasn't allocated somehow?
No.
No, okay. I would encourage your group to, when you're talking about compensating for duties that are the same, and I know you talked about trying to make that uniform, I would really encourage you to make that uniform. I know you said it would take like a couple of cycles to get through, but I don't want to hear from Glenwood Elementary teachers, for example, that they're getting paid less than Sopris teachers for doing the same thing. So whatever those things are, I would encourage you to make those uniform. And I wanted to know about where the money is going or has gone for the positions this year that have been unfilled. For example, teacher positions that were, like, I think we had a teacher leave right at the beginning of the year. That position was never filled, and that money was just, or the kids were just shared around. So what happened to that money? And then, like, I know we have bus drivers, like, totally need a lot more bus drivers. So, and I don't need you to tell the answer to this now, or maybe if it's a quick answer, but I would like to know more about what happens to that money, especially if it's part of our pot. It feels like it should be.
So traditionally, unfilled positions fall to reserves.
However, I think we're spending money on a sub to cover, for any gaps in that.
But subs are their own budget. It doesn't come out of that same fund. So anytime there's an unfilled position, generally falls to reserves.
We've tried to be strategic and creative with bus drivers by putting more money into advertising and recruitment, knowing that's extra, and Nathan's spot on there that it doesn't touch the entirety of that unfilled.
How many unfilled certified positions do we have this year?
I can get you that.
Along with compensation for teachers, because I know that the high school teachers had a lot of conversations this year back and forth about this, and it would be great if we didn't have to do that work. If the group could come up with a recommendation. I found myself and Peter at Salt and Paul Glenwood calling around, like, what are we doing? What's this gonna look like? Things like extra duties, including outside of school overnight trips. One thing that I think is uniquely high school perhaps is if there's a recommendation for administrative duties for teachers who are willing to carry an extra responsibility. I bring that up. Administrators at the high school level have to be present at every sporting event and night event. And so when there's two of you in the school during fall season for Cora and myself, that ends up being a minimum of usually 2 nights a week. We are hoping in the future to offer that to teachers who have some administrative experience, who would be willing to carry the responsibility. And I wonder what that compensation would look like. I feel like we talked about it between Glenwood, Basalt, and Marine Fork, and then the number that came up with it was like, God, that doesn't seem like fair compensation.
seem like enough. Because you're carrying extra than just taking tickets. It's like telling kids to behave. And so anyway, that would be an interest I would have within this, is an administrative compensation for, at any level, teachers who would be willing to be a supervision role rather than just there's a ticket taker. I do know too, some of the big XS, because I've been a part of those, you know, like Salt High School's big XS sometimes have 30 kids on them. If you're the adult taking 30 kids, I don't think the hourly wage, I think that's the administrative wage. That's just, I'd like to push that.
I had a teacher who drives from Buffalo this week. She's pretty upset. I know busing is classified. She had always classified. She's been driving for 21 years. She's getting paid the same wage to drive a bus as somebody higher last week. So that was going on.
I've heard that from parents as well. Parents that have been there for 5 or 6 years are getting very close, like within the dollar.
That, I mean, they're all on the same scale, so they'd have to be on the same step and lane. for that to happen.
They
Okay.
talked to after raise last year.
Well, and I think that raises a bigger question of like, you know, our subcommittee is only talking about certified staff. And so I think there needs to be discussion about representation and a process for our classified staff as well.
I wonder if we move over the total to 30. If she said she was very
I think that, yeah.
I mean, I could recap because I don't think anybody over there was unmuted. And you were, yeah, so. But I guess we could just recap real quick. The discussion was around discrepancies in pay around people who are driving, classified staff, paras, and how did they, yeah, basically that there's discrepancies and concerns and how do we address them, which led to my comment about, I think there should be a process for our classified staff, so their interests can be raised as well, because our subcommittee was only discussing certified.
Which is a great segue into our subcommittee,
Yeah.
which is taking up that topic.
Okay.
Let's
do it.
That's great. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks. Hey, I'm seeing some murmurings about people that might need to leave at 6. Can the bulk of us commit to 6:30 or do we need to come up with an alternate plan?
I can do 6:30.
6:10.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she needs to leave 30. I can do 6:30, but I can't.
6:20.
Yeah, I mean, I think we might just leave.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got 2 subcommittees. One of those is health benefits. I would like to propose that there's a lot of recorded information that's been shared in the staff newsletter. We've gone full transparency, open meetings. Would everyone be okay with me perhaps resharing those recordings so that you can get up to speed in a different forum than this one, knowing that that committee doesn't yet have a recommendation? Okay. Awesome. Any questions on that, on the process? Awesome. Okay. Rolling forward then. Okay, we are the Policy, Practice, and Purpose Subcommittee, kind of the island of lost toys here. So we're gonna throw a lot of small and sometimes disconnected pieces at you. And the approach our subcommittee has been taking, and please, all of you feel free to jump in, is to try to see if we can get any quick wins. And so we've been tackling increasingly weighty or, I don't know, controversial topics over the weeks, meeting regularly. And you'll see that reflected in here. So our subcommittee is tackling 3 interests: compensation policies and practices. So kind of getting some clarity in what the compensation subcommittee is working on, focusing specifically on things like leave. Interest 6, which is revisiting the IBB process to clarify the purpose for what we're all doing here together and our practices, and then addressing teacher leave policy and practices. Oh, sorry, that first one wasn't leave. It was more like odds and ends. Okay, for interest 5, here is the kind of conglomeration of different interests that were identified. We had a question about whether charter schools can bring in years upon hire and if they were eligible for a district retirement plan. We had another interest focusing on whether full-time guest teachers could count that year as a full-time guest teacher, a building sub, as we amp up that as a pathway towards teachers. Why must salary advancement credits reset to 0 after a master's degree? And then looking at compensation process for teacher planning period pay, that absorbing students pay. In talking with charter leaders, we're not seeing a lot of drive toward changing how we count years as a teacher upon hire at CCS or Two Rivers, or eligibility to a retirement plan. So while our group hasn't formally made a recommendation on this one yet, it's not looking likely that we would move that forward. Just going to pause for questions on the time or additions.
For deliberation in the future, or is this like, okay, we make this decision and this is off the table like for a while?
I think everything is subject for revisiting every single year.
Just to clarify, this means that if there's a charter school teacher, one of the schools in the district, and they've been there for 10 years, and if they come here, then those 10 years wouldn't count. They have to start at some point.
Those count 1-to-1, but they are subject to the max incoming. So this year 11, next year 12. They can't exceed that. Like if you were a 20-year teacher and you leave and return to the district, as long as it's within 3 years, you get to bring those years forward with continuity.
You go from like the Salt Elementary to Silver's Elementary, you could just take your 4 years, but once saying that you're still within this. Because charters are outside our rules and regulations and policies, and they're subject to their own compensation policies. All right, but
So it's treated like any school, other school outside of the district that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And we're talking about our charter schools? Okay, like Two Rivers and Carbondale Community.
Yes.
They are not technically Roaring Fork School District employees.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Correct. The district are authorized under our district. The school is authorized under our district, but their staff are separate. And part of that is some of the benefits and waivers they get by being a charter. I think the hesitancy from those charter leaders is that it would make it more, it would make it easier for us to recruit from their pool of teachers, and that doesn't seem beneficial to them. Yeah.
How did this come into this group?
I didn't want to be the, teacher compensation policy upon hire. Yeah.
I think Anne just wanted to hear from other people rather than her just making this.
That makes sense.
What are they saying, what other people can.
Yeah.
We love it when people ask that question.
Trying to bring things to you. The other piece of this is that if you teach at Carbondale Community School for 15 years, you do your last 2 years with us, you have 17 years, you would not be eligible like a teacher at Sopers Elementary, for example, for our in-district retirement plan, not para, but to get that 40% retirement incentive, because the bulk of those years would not have been at a traditional district school. That is not common, but it's heartbreaking for those staff, and we don't have any written clarity about that. And so I'm seeking guidance from this group just to formalize that. Okay. Secondly, the group recommended that because we're trying to increase this pathway from full-time guest teachers, the building sub to teacher, and we're seeing more subs transition in that way. We would like to recommend counting up to 3 years in that full-time guest teacher role toward salary schedule credit upon hire as a teacher. That's different from a daily sub, just a drop in. And also clarifying that the years as a guest teacher would not count toward the retirement incentive until they become a teacher.
I'm so curious if you could extend that to student teachers in the district as well. They do their student teaching.
I love that idea. I love that idea.
Definitely come at extensions.
Let's add it to our discussion. That's good.
I would also add preschool teachers. So they're currently classified.
Cool. Yeah.
So why wouldn't that time count towards retirement incentive? All employees are eligible for retirement incentive, whether they're classified or not.
We specifically exclude subs from the retirement incentive.
Oh, they get pair, but it's not the retirement incentive, the early retirement.
Yeah.
Even though they're full-time classified employees.
Let's add it too. Let's
I think
talk
guest
about it
teacher
again.
sub is a bit of a misnomer for those folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Well, is that regular subs?
Revisiting their eligibility for the district retirement incentive. Good point, Nathan. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna keep rolling. We're still discussing 2 big pieces here. Salary advancement credits that reset to 0 after a master's degree, and then the compensation process for teacher planning period pay. I think you're dealing with the dollar amount. We're talking about process in general, but we should probably connect our subcommittees on this particular one. All right, here are the pieces that make up interest number 6. So the role of IBB in policy creation and revision, the general scope of IBB, the openness of our meetings, working together on an IBB survey that's collaborative, not just for RFCEA, but across the entire group. And then any other changes that we might want to make to the documented process that lives in the regulation. On this one, we've opened it up to all observers, and we're still, I think, working out the technology, but big step in that direction, which is great. Yeah, observer.
Clarification that we did talk about subcommittee meetings remaining just the subcommittee, but the big meetings, beginning, middle, and end are the ones that are open.
And this is on being YouTube live streamed, right? So if somebody did want to see it, they wouldn't be locked, we wouldn't see them on the Zoom. So we don't, yeah, okay. The only way to find that data would be like how many views we got on YouTube. Okay.
And I feel like our subcommittee would be really interested just to hear your perceptions of it. So if you have feedback on today, please send it in and we can learn and grow from it.
Howie, you were taking notes on questions people had for our committee, right?
Yeah.
Can you, and you may have already, be sure to add the part that Angie just said about connecting the committees for the absorption or the planning period pay, right?
Or
yeah, both absorbing and.
Okay. Thank you.
We're still talking about the bulk of these things, but I think our group has had really robust discussions about this. And I want to give credit to the involvement of Catherine Kuhlenberg from a board perspective on this. We still have a lot of work to do, but we haven't come to a recommendation yet, but we've laid a strong foundation. Any group subcommittee additions to? Do any of you want to add anything? Okay. And
That's it.
Just because it adds on to what we were talking about before with classified
thank you. Yeah.
involvement. So in our last meeting, we just discussed the IBB process, and a few things came up, like we talked about should other entities of the district who are not currently in this process, should they be part of that? We don't have an answer for that yet, but we are talking about it. And I have reached out to Eric Hansen and have some feedback for our group on that. And then we also talked about like possibly like what the role that the board has in creating policy and how that affects like a final possible agreement, and you know, how that is held as an agreement that is held for a certain period of time. So we don't have any answers, but that's something that we're talking about.
And there has been interest expressed by non-certified departments in the district to have an IBB that includes everyone together, which I think is really interesting. And then interest number 7 is laser focused on teacher leave policies and practices. Policy GBGG, which I probably use every single day in my job, includes the type of days and this prohibition from using personal days prior to student breaks. So we'd like to, figure out if we want to continue with that provision. And if we do, gaining clarity on exactly what counts as an exception to that, and then explore other meaningful improvements to that policy. I've put these here in orange because the group wants to gain feedback from you all. Not that we're recommending or not these things, they're different possible solutions to our current leave policy, gained from learning more about what other districts do, and how we might be able to borrow from their successes. Megan, any chance you want to go through them?
Sure. Just so you know, our process, I went through several, I went through a lot, is like our variable salary districts and their leave policies. We just like made a list, and then we all went through kind of the pros and cons, and then as a group we decided. Oh my gosh.
Sorry. Let me say that again. we went through all of the comparable districts and to see what they have for leave policies. And then we listed pros and cons for them. And then we, as a group, went through and just said, like, either do we all agree that this is a good one or all agree it's not a good one? And the ones that you see here on her slide are ones that we all agreed were ones that we'd like to get your feedback on. So the first one was assigning leave that's not delineated between sick and personal. That just means leave is leave. You don't have sick days and personal days, you just have leave. Second one is currently right now, the leave that you have accumulated that you get paid out at the end of the year or that you get paid out when you retire is not equivalent to the cost for hiring a sub for that day. So we're looking at possibly changing the payout so that it lines up with your daily or the long-term sub rate. We're looking at revisiting 2 things. So how much we pay out to teachers when they leave the district, and also how much we pay out at the end of the year for how many of your 4 days that are left, your 4 personal days that are left, to determine if the amount we pay out is is correct. Currently, we pay $100 for that a day. And currently, when teachers retire, I believe we pay $60 a day for any that they have left. So obviously that second one, the amount that's accumulated from year to year, that might change if we went to like a general leave policy. And then the last one was allowing teachers to donate days to other people who need or want days. There's more? Oh, no, well, okay. So and we just decided that we wanted our leave policy to treat people as professionals. We wanted to make sure it wasn't onerous in the management of it from HR's point of view and front office and things like that. We wanted it to make sure that teachers are the best people, to reflect that teachers are the best people to be in front of students in class. We don't want it to increase the burden on the guest teacher system or for other teachers on the building to cover classes. We want to try not to increase it. And we want to balance the needs of the staff with the availability of guest teachers and allow teachers to be able to be flexible and deal with what's happening in their lives, rather than kind of treat them like we distrust them or we're suspicious about what they do. So I think we'd really like to get on that last slide, your ideas on the 5 ideas that we have. Probably our biggest one is, what do you think about if we just assigned leave?
Can I ask a clarifying question on the money you threw out? So $100 right now, if at the end of the year I have personal days left. $60 if I retire. Is that $60 for my sick days, $60 for my personal days?
$60 for your sick days, because your personal days don't roll over anymore.
Okay.
You're paid out for your personal days that are left at the end of the year. Any sick days you have roll over any sick days. So you're getting, when you retire, you're getting paid for any sick day you have.
Okay.
I thought personal days rolled to sick and you got paid out for anything over, it's like 800 hours accumulated, some huge amount.
No, personal days, like if you have,
Like confusing.
there's a certain number, like 2 weeks, it's like a 2-week-ish amount of sick days. If you have that much, then at the end of the year, you get paid out for your personal days.
And then, once you accumulate a certain number of sick days, then no more roll over.
Right, you get paid out.
You get paid out.
But I think Nathan's right. If you don't have a certain number of sick days, personal days first go into this.
Yeah.
There's a minimum
I think
amount.
it's 2 weeks worth.
Yeah, I think you're right. Mhm.
No, it's like 799. It's like some huge amount.
I get paid out and I don't have that many sick days. Like every year you get paid out for your 4 days if you don't use them. Sick days, yeah. I was on, helped write that policy. I still get the, yeah.
End of the school year, any money used for personal therapy. 2 other numbers. $150.
We pay $150 plus para benefits to a sub to cover for that day. So it's a third number. And then the fourth number that's often in people's heads is if you take a personal day adjacent to a student break, the cost of that personal day to you is at your daily rate, which for many people is in the mid $300 range. So it's 1/185th of your annual salary.
You get docked.
Yeah.
If you use it as a personal day.
So I think what people see is you pay me out $100 if I don't use it, but if I do use it when I can't, you charge me $380. And those feel really disproportionate.
Well, and maybe this is like a lot of these things are a little outdated. Like, it's the same thing. Like if I don't use my day, if I use a day and you pay a sub, that sub makes 200. If I don't, 150, then at the end of the year, I would get $100 back for that, or $60 if it was a sick day. Like if I was toward the end of my career, it would make a lot of sense for me to just take the last 4 months of school off if I had 100 days and just work at Ace Hardware, and you could make $150 a day instead of $60 a day for each of those days.
We only have 4 personal days.
No, I'm talking. Yeah, right. Well, yeah.
You call it sick.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if people do that, but I would want to incentivize people to do that. $60 doesn't seem like very much at the end of your, for unused days. Like I guess the point that I'm trying to say is it makes more sense to use those days throughout the year, which we don't want people to do. I think that I love the idea of not delineating between sick and personal days, and I think especially in our current time, like that idea of a mental health day, like mental health has risen in its importance in all of our lives. And some days, yeah, your body feels fine, but your mind is done. And I think the current program, like it incentivizes people to lie. You have to create these creative terms of phrase to get a sick day, and really you just like, you need a mental health day. And so, but then I also understand that if we did that, there would probably be more days being taken because people don't have to lie anymore and they can take a day off when they need one. And then that would be in your second bullet, like you'd have to tweak the amount of money that they're getting paid back at the end of the year. Like if you had way too many people taking way too many days, then you could just up the amount of money that they get paid back at the end of the year to disincentivize them to do that all year long, right? And so I think it would just take a couple of years to tweak that like formula to where it seemed like sound. Like, yeah.
Well, I wonder if it could just be a policy tweak too. Like, I mean, if we did just 10 days of personal leave, sick, personal, whatever you need, just leave, then you just kind of maybe make a policy around how you take that leave if we're worried about people taking 4 months off or something like that. But I think, yeah, because you're right, it hinges on having a relationship with your administrator or whoever to say, because to be completely honest, we do have teachers who come to us and say like, hey, I need to take a sick day. When would be a good time? Like they're taking a personal day, but they're taking a sick day, and I'm totally fine with that because that's what they need. So I think creating just a transparent system. I mean, I think Eagle County just does 10 leave days, so I mean, other districts are doing it, but it might mean changing some of the policies to match the payouts and the.
And to Sarah's point, like you would know ahead of time that you need a sub.
It helps us a lot. Yeah, I'd rather know ahead of time.
Tight bubble. People are calling in the morning of, even though they might have known 2 weeks earlier that they needed this day because that has to look like a sick day. So we're creating lying, creating lack of transparency, creating lack of trust, and we're creating a sub issue.
I also feel though that what's contributing to this need for mental health days is all the additional work you're taking on covering during your planning periods because we have a shortage of subs. And
I'm not just talking about, I'm talking about anything. Like I'm talking about, I just think that we've had this conversation for years. And like Sarah said, like we just have teachers that are fudging it because they really need that day off. They might be out of personal days, but they really have to go do something that day because we do live in a world where we work the hours that the bank is open, the hours that the doctor's office is open. And so sometimes we have to fudge it. And I would like to see us stop fudging it, be able to prepare in advance for more subs, or for me to know that in a week I'm covering a class, because then I can mentally prepare as opposed to 8 a.m. in the morning. Guess what? We're getting 20 more papers today. Like, it'd be nice to have that time to think it through, to think about how the schedules are going to look for the days that we're short subs. How can we all jump in and help out without stressing it out? I personally get way more stressed at 8 a.m. when I got to plan for 40 versus 20 than I would if I had a week in advance to think about it.
So we'll send out a feedback collector. Do we want to limit it to this group, or do we want to expand the reach beyond?
Feedback collector.
We want, our subcommittee is seeking input on people's perceptions or desire to move forward one or more of these ideas. Do we want to keep it just to our IBB group, or do we, okay, and then perhaps as building reps, you're going into your schools, listening feedback, and then putting that on the collector? Awesome. Okay.
If we could increase the amount of payouts for people not taking their leave, you know, whether they're leaving the day or whatever, so that would encourage people to still be honest about their leave and not, even if it's all just leave.
And I think we hear that loud and clear, and I think as a subcommittee, we're really committed to finding ways to treat teachers like professionals, knowing that we're not hitting the mark right now.
Are you asking for feedback specifically on that first bullet or on all of the bullets? Sorry, that was not a yes or no question. Are you asking for the first bullet or all of the bullets? All of them. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
And I would just reiterate, when you word the feedback collector, remind us to represent, like, because I think sometimes we just want to answer the way we, you know, that happens to everyone. So, but really we are representatives, and so we need to ask around and see what people think, and then put in, you know, that. Just like to remind us all that every time.
Also, I guess just with the feedback survey, maybe just for your own sanity, you can keep it like a checkbox type thing, so you can get more quantitative data, less qualitative. Right now in the format, it wouldn't be very easy to do a quantitative data set for these bullets. You're going to have to tweak that quite a bit to make it quantitative.
Something else that I'm thinking about, just in terms of how we put in our days and our subs, making sure that's consistent across all buildings. I don't know if you guys have looked into that, but it's different from building to building. And I'm also curious if we use the program frontline, which I think we might, giving teachers access to them so that we can see our subs and contact our subs beforehand would be super helpful. I don't know who my sub is until the day of, and I want to like tell them my class and have a relationship with that sub, and that's a way that we can facilitate that relationship.
Yes, it should be ready to rock this year, and we'll roll it out for next year. So excited.
What were you saying first about, I didn't understand your first point.
Making sure that the process of submitting grades are consistent across schools.
Like how we ask.
Yeah, for the day.
Okay.
The day. Just as I've heard from different schools, there's different things that are happening on how that process goes.
Can we do a quick check-in on our final meeting date and time, and if there's any specific logistical things people want to consider?
What is this, February, March?
Make it longer? I don't know what it's scheduled for, but
8 to 4 on the calendar right now.
it's not a 3-hour meeting.
I do think we need to be prepared in case we need to go longer. I mean, it's not fair to our process to say, okay, we are at whatever, 4 o'clock, we're done.
Should we schedule a backup day or should we schedule for longer? because we have our facilitator.
Usually that last day, we're able to wrap everything up. This is the meeting that usually goes long. And it did tonight.
Well, in our meeting for our group, I think it would be really helpful for subcommittees if there's issues that showed up in other subcommittee suggestions that are causing red flags for you, that you know you're not going, like you're gonna veto that, you would not pass it. If you could just contact one of the subcommittee members to communicate, and not only like, I'm gonna red flag this, or I'm gonna assist it, but like, if there's any insight into how, like what changes could be made to the suggestions that were already put forth, that would make it so that you would be able to move in your, even to a 1. Because I don't know, otherwise a lot of the work could be done, and then like you said, this last meeting could be super quick, but then if like a lot of people are saying no, I'm just thinking back to last year, and there were some things that were fisted and that we couldn't move forward on because, and then there was a lot of unfinished business, and it did bleed into this meeting at the beginning of the year. And so I'm just hoping to prevent that by saying like, hey, if there's stuff on there you are not okay with, communicate with one of the subcommittee members and any insights into how we can change that, so that we're not this deadlock, at 4 p.m. on 8th, and like, okay, we're just not going to have that. There's going to be no resolution.
I guess I'm feeling a little unclear, like,
I'm sorry. I was just wondering, I was feeling a little confused about what exactly we have the slideshow presentations, but some of them are not set with solid recommendations. So it seems like there is more to discuss. Obviously, there's more subcommittee work that needs to happen. So how will we get kind of a finalized list to look at, so we don't come into this meeting with still a lot of unanswered questions in March?
And that kind of goes to my question. We have 2 weeks.
yeah.
Is 2 weeks enough time for the subcommittees to do the work that needs to be done to prepare for that? Because we have next week and the week after, basically, until March 8th.
I think if
So that's 2 meetings if you meet once a week.
fundamentally against something, if they give us feedback on how we can shift it, then yes. But I think if people are fundamentally against it and they're just like, no, do it, then no. So that's why I'm saying, like, if people are willing to like, for lack of a better word, negotiate with the subcommittee about certain items on the list or for recommendations that they wanna see changed and how they would recommend changing it, so they at least give it a 1, then 2 weeks is plenty of time.
Yeah.
But if they're just on a flat 0 and sorry, unless it's removed, the answer is no, then.
Well, and is there any sort of workflow to manage that? Because I also, as a subcommittee member, have questions, for example, of what kind of happened with our subcommittee thing is this kind of other elephant, right? Took over, and is that going to get in the way?
Right.
Because I feel like we have a really good proposal to like increase our base salary and our salaries, and we have a lot of money to work with. But if we need to talk about that more, do we need to, I don't know. I'm just like, is that going to get in the way of approving? And we need to know that. So we need to figure that out in the subcommittee Right. But is that just individuals emailing, or is there a better workflow for that? That's my wondering there, is like, how do we share that feedback in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming?
And I agree. And I feel like with Angie's committee, like they're working on the IBB policies and the procedures, but we didn't see anything about what they're thinking. So we could walk in and it could be a long conversation, like, because I mean, it's great that they're working on it, but we haven't seen a draft or any conversation. So I'm really wondering the same thing.
Do you all typically provide those final recommendations to all of you prior to that final session, or is it, okay?
I also think historically that IBB meeting has happened in April more often than in March. We could try to send recommendations to the group for commenting and questions, extend the full day into April. I don't know, we could add a step if that would help.
Yeah, I mean, we also have a lot more of March left. March 8th is early March, so we also still have.
I think it was conferences and then spring break.
Yeah.
And I feel like
wasn't it partially because
testing?
Well, there's testing, but wasn't it also the budget, Nathan, getting the budget to the board by a certain point in time if we were in a retroactive pay, and that needed to be, was that?
Usually retro paid in March.
Okay.
So by approving in March, it'll be paid in April.
Would it be worth meeting on March 8th from like this 2 to 4 again, or 2 to 6 again, just to handle the budget only?
Like that.
And then push everything else to April for a full day conversation? Would that cover both
We
issues?
take everything to the board at the same time.
Oh, okay.
The board has to approve whatever comes out of that.
The compensation for the personal days or the sick days or et cetera, that like, we can't submit the budget and then, change things dramatically in policy about how we compensate for those days. So like those two, I think, need to be for sure on the same agenda.
So this,
Brought things separately in the past, just so you know. But I also have to tie together.
So this conversation we're having right now is about process, and because that's our group. I mean, one of the things that we've thought about, that is a group that has come up, but like I've thought about having all of our bargaining happen within a week's time, for example. And that could be a recommendation that like we bring back. Like, is that, what do you think about that kind of idea? Instead of starting in like, when do we start this year? November and going through March. Pick a 2-week time when we know what the money is, or a 1-week time, or however much time we have, and just like, get subs for our room for all that time, and clear our calendars for other things, and we just bargain and get it done with in that time.
What if we keep our full day? We start with compensation and we commit to working through all of those things. And then we dedicate the bulk of time, the remaining, to IBB process. Knowing that if we could spill over while still moving forward the budget, sort of a hybrid of what you were proposing, Stephanie,
Yeah, because I think the IBB process part could be a separate meeting in April or May even, because it's talking about how to do this better next year versus all of the other interests that are very time sensitive for board presentation,
I just
right?
don't want
Because
that
I
to
don't think we
hold
would
up
need to bring the
compensation.
IBB process to the board at the same time as the budget, right?
We definitely need to bring it to the board though.
Yeah, but I was like, it might be brought to the board in May.
Right.
Versus when the budget's brought, I don't know, just an idea, just because I know that will also take a lot of time. And I don't want to I want to make sure that the compensation pieces and the budget pieces are well agreed upon.
and if we're optimistic, maybe we will accomplish everything on the 8th, but that leaves us time to not feel forced to make a decision or to not reach consensus because of time constraints.
Should we extend it to 5 or keep it to 4?
Bring your sleeping bag. I call that corner. Do folks, I think back to the question of, is it feasible to turn this around in 2 weeks? After what you all heard from your colleagues today, is it feasible to come to your final recommendations in 2 weeks? I mean, I feel like the conversations, I think there's just one thing.
Yeah, I just don't want the strategic improvement plan. Is that what it's called? This new elephant in the room? Acceleration, learning acceleration plan to get in the way. And I think we've already said that, but I just wonder how we can separate that, or are we gonna end up dealing with that too in March?
Well, I guess I would pose that, like, maybe is that something that the exec team could think about? And like, how can we best answer all these questions that have come up? Because I know, you tried and like the email and things like that, but apparently people still have more questions. So it might be something for you guys to kind of just discuss. How can we best address these questions and clarify things, not just for this group, but for everyone who's asking the questions? And then maybe get back to us so that it doesn't get in the way of our the process. Does that make sense?
Can I give some history that maybe helps with this whole thing? In the past, we've adopted, as Meg said, puppies. And the district comes to us and like, these are great and you're gonna love them and they're great. But then the money runs out and then it comes out of our salaries, our ability to attract new teachers at a high pay, or having to increase our class sizes so we have more kids trying to serve, all these different needs with less money. So our concern is, it sounds great, like nobody's saying we don't want a reading interventionist full-time in our building. Our concern is the long-term effect on this and not having put teacher voice in the room that we're hearing in our buildings, because we've lived through this repeatedly the past 5-7 years of all these puppies that are now giant dogs eating our salaries. So that's our concern behind it, and that's why we're kind of asking for a 3-year thought process, just so that we can go back and say, no, they've got this covered. It's not coming out. Your class size isn't going to get bigger. It's going to be a benefit, which is what you guys are really trying to do. But we need some hardcore evidence to get the trust there, because it hasn't been there for years. If that makes this any easier to understand why there's been pushback. It's not that we don't want the help. We want it. We just want to make sure it's not going to come back and hurt us in the end like it has in the past.
How about if every subcommittee sends out a feedback collector, which includes a question, what additional data do you want to see, or what information would be helpful to bring by the end? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good
in a
idea.
week, because
Yeah, not only you guys, not only your committee, but all committees send, feedback collector, a quantitative one. That's quantitative feedback collector.
2 weeks, we have time to send out a survey, process the data, reach back out, have our meetings.
Right.
I just feel like we're super short on time, 3 surveys, 4 surveys, and make them, analyze the data.
Yeah.
Really call. I just.
Yes.
well, I think it's just this crew.
Yeah, I think it's just collecting our, like, so that we can be a little more clear in our subcommittees about our recommendations are this, and this, so that we can more easily come to a clear vote in March. So it was just a survey for us, like they were going to send a survey asking about their bullet points. What else do you guys think want us to discuss in our subcommittee, right? Or get clarification on.
I think we've already told you, with the other groups, this last group that we haven't.
Yeah, so it's just the last group, but I guess what Angie's saying is, it sounds like with the compensation subcommittee and this other part that's come into it,
I mean,
I can't tell you what I want to know.
I'm not sure that's part of the compensation committee though. That's
Well, it did take over a large part of our time
Doesn't
today.
mean it's part of the.
Okay,
it's-
I just want to clarify it,
it's
that's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Still in position and design. There's been a ton of work that's gone into that.
Yeah.
Happy to explain what it is, but to say you're gonna get a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that plan, I don't think is what that's.
No, I don't think that. I just think that so it doesn't take over our committee again or our work that
Right,
we're doing. I just think, I just wanted to say like, obviously there needs to be more communication about that so that it doesn't. So at some point, I don't know how that happens, but like, because there has been a lot of work that went into it and it's so that we can get the support. What?
It's not a stated interest.
Yeah. Yeah, so.
But it is part of the stated interest in that if it affects the salaries of the certified staff. No, it's a stated
Either
interest.
now or in the future.
And I think the confusion for me comes in the process, and maybe this is something for an IBB process, is we did allow, like, it wasn't said, hey, this is separate. We allowed that conversation to go on for about 20 minutes as a part of our committee work. And so I think that's where it's confusing. Is it connected or not? If we're going to say, no, it's not connected, then I think maybe that goes into the association to ask the questions that want to be answered separately from this IBB process. If it's not, if we're supposed to only stick to stated interests,
Right.
and that isn't one of them, then I think it's a process question of if the association wants to address that, how do they do that? And let's keep it separate from our committee work so that we don't get dragged down. That, yeah, if that makes sense.
I'm just aiming for efficiency too, you know, not trying to add work to people's plates.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard though, because I feel like as like all of us attack. Like
It's big.
I mean, it's, you know, that is so cheap, it's full. And so then we kind of feel like we're like bringing people down.
Right.
Bringing up in because we actually have some of the key stakeholders, you know, in the meeting with us, and like always asking pointed questions like, I don't know. So I guess if not this, then maybe there might be a more like obvious mode of communication for those kind of questions. You know, whether it's like a Google form or, you know, something that we write those in and, you know, whoever instructional team or whatever wants to answer it and then put that out. That was just trying to support our work, but also, you know, we are for a lot of people in our buildings, the person that facing us back in this fall.
And I think in addition, the part in communication that is kind of like the last paragraph, I think it was in the staff newsletter that said, you know, to summarize, paying teachers is important. And that will be part of this, and we'll be announcing that later this spring. Kind of felt like, are you guys does that mean that that's in conjunction with what the compensation committee work we're doing through IBB, or is that like a separate thing that you guys have discussed? And that's the part that I have teachers coming to me saying, is an IBB negotiating salary schedule? This sounds like, is this part of that? So.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we opt to do, and one of the questions that I have in the process.
Sorry.
So one of the things that I think we need to make sure we discuss around process is who is at this table. I think it's very clear for RFCEA, but for us, it's less clear, right? So like we need to agree with everybody at the last meeting who we want to add on our team for next year. And so like if that didn't happen last year, which it didn't, then we're not able to add folks like Jeff that represents a lot of our classified staff, who I think voice would be really important to be here. Or like Kelsey from a communications perspective, because like what I'm thinking about is we should probably add like a website tab that is just for the learning acceleration plan, and it has FAQs that address, you know, some of the questions that have come up here today and any others that come up. Just so like there's a record that's clean and clear about what it is, what it isn't, where's the money coming from, and etc. And so I think that that is a next step for us. I agree with Nathan. That's not one of the interests that we're talking about. It doesn't impact the share that we're dedicating to teacher salaries. But I do hear that it's an important point, and appreciate y'all sharing some of those questions and concerns that you have heard about. Actually, I was kind of surprised because I didn't get any responses to my email. And so feel free also to share any other questions that might be helpful to us in crafting the FAQs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
Okay.
That is true. Right, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we could even rate, yeah, and I like your, I like your
idea of starting with prioritizing that compensation discussion and then ending with the process.
Okay,
We'll be here.
great.
All right.
See you then.
Thank you.